Across deserts, jungles, and oceans, stone and metal remain where entire civilizations vanished. Their structures are not crude remnants of the past. They are precise, immense, and unsettlingly sophisticated. How were these monuments aligned with the skies, carved with microscopic accuracy, or built to endure thousands of years? What knowledge shaped societies long before modern science had a name? Tonight, we follow the evidence left behind. Engineering that defies timelines, technologies that challenge assumptions, and questions history still avoids. Look closer. The answers may not rewrite history, but they will change how you see it. Rising quietly from the flat plains of La Mancha, Motilla de l'Azuer does not announce itself as a fortress or a monument. At first glance, it appears almost accidental, concentric stone walls emerging from the earth, weathered and restrained, blending into the ochre landscape of central Spain. There are no towering battlements, no decorative carvings, no obvious symbols of power. And yet, beneath this unassuming form lies one of the most unusual constructions of Bronze Age Europe. Motilla de l'Azuer dates to roughly 2200 to 1500 BCE, a period marked by increasing environmental stress across the Iberian Peninsula. Archaeologists identify it as part of the Motilla culture, a network of small fortified sites scattered across La Mancha. But Motilla de l'Azuer stands apart. At its core is a deep, stone-lined well, one of the oldest known in Western Europe, reaching down to an underground aquifer. Everything about the structure seems designed to protect and control access to water. The walls form multiple defensive rings, guiding movement inward toward the central tower and the well itself. Storage areas, dwellings, and livestock enclosures occupy the surrounding spaces, suggesting a community organized around this critical resource. In a landscape prone to drought, water was not merely essential, it was strategic. The prevailing explanation is straightforward. Motilla de l'Azuer was a fortified water management system, built during a time of climatic instability to ensure survival. Yet the scale and precision of the construction raise questions. The well descends more than 15 meters, excavated through hard sediment without metal tools as we understand them today. How did Bronze Age builders locate the aquifer with such accuracy? Was this knowledge inherited through generations of trial and error, or did it reflect a deeper understanding of geology and hydrology than we typically attribute to societies of this period? Some researchers point to patterns across the region. Motillas are often spaced at regular intervals, as if part of a coordinated network. This has led to speculation that they functioned not just as isolated settlements, but as nodes in a broader system, managing water distribution, trade routes, or population movement during prolonged droughts. If so, this implies a level of regional planning and social organization that challenges the idea of loosely connected Bronze Age communities. There are also unanswered questions about the site's defensive nature. While the walls are substantial, there is little evidence of sustained warfare. The fortification seems excessive if the primary threat was sporadic conflict. Could the defenses have served another purpose? Ritual separation, social control, or protection against environmental rather than human dangers? In times of scarcity, access to water can be as contentious as any battlefield. More speculative theories linger at the edges of academic discussion. Some suggest that the builders possessed lost techniques for groundwater detection, now poorly understood. Others wonder whether Motilla de l'Azuer reflects a cultural memory of earlier, more advanced traditions, knowledge passed down from societies that adapted to dramatic climate shifts long before recorded history. These ideas remain unproven, but they persist, fueled by the site's singular design and the absence of clear parallels elsewhere in Europe. What is certain is that Motilla de l'Azuer was not an improvised response to crisis. Its construction required planning, labor coordination, and long-term vision. It represents a deliberate investment in infrastructure, resilience, and control over nature, qualities often associated with much later civilizations. Today, the structure stands silent, its well dry, its walls open to the sky. Excavation has revealed much, but not everything. We still do not fully understand how its builders perceived their world, what fears motivated them, or what knowledge guided their hands deep into the earth. Motilla dell'Azuer remains a reminder that the past is not always primitive and that some answers, like the water once hidden below, may still lie just out of reach. As the silence settles over Motilla dell'Azuer and its stone rings fade back into the plains of La Mancha, the story of early human ingenuity does not end. It simply shifts eastward, following older paths of settlement and memory. Long before fortified wells guarded water in Bronze Age Spain, another community was already experimenting with permanence, structure, and a radically new way of living. On the volcanic plains of central Anatolia, beneath layers of ash and time, Aşıklı Höyük quietly holds those traces. At dawn, the site is easy to miss. Low stone walls emerge gently from the soil near the Melendez River, their outlines softened by thousands of years of erosion. There are no monumental facades here, no towering temples or defensive walls. Instead, Aşıklı Höyük reveals itself slowly as a dense cluster of stone houses, tightly packed, their foundations overlapping like memories rewritten again and again. This is one of the earliest known permanent settlements in the world, dating back to around 8,200 BCE. The people of Aşıklı Höyük lived at a turning point in human history. They were among the first to abandon a fully nomadic life, choosing instead to remain in one place for generations. Their homes were rectangular, built from stone and mud, arranged in an irregular but deliberate pattern. There were no streets in the modern sense. Movement likely occurred across rooftops, through shared spaces, blurring the line between private and communal life. Archaeologists see this as evidence of early social cohesion, an experiment in collective living before hierarchy became visibly defined. The houses are remarkably similar in size and structure, suggesting a society without obvious elites. Yet, the repetition itself raises questions. Why rebuild in the same footprints, layer upon layer, instead of expanding outward? What anchored these people so firmly to this exact location? One answer lies beneath the settlement. The region offered fertile soil, access to water, and nearby obsidian sources, a volcanic glass essential for tools and trade. Aşıklı Höyük appears to have been an early hub in obsidian exchange networks that stretched across Anatolia. This alone implies planning, long-distance contact, and a degree of economic awareness not always associated with such early communities. But daily life here was not simple. Skeletal remains show signs of physical stress, injury, and illness. Evidence of early animal domestication, particularly sheep and goats, suggests a society in transition, still adapting to the demands of sedentary life. Some researchers note that the architecture itself may reflect this struggle. The houses are solid but inward-looking, with few openings as if designed for insulation, containment, or control. More puzzling are the repeated internal modifications. Floors were replastered many times, sometimes covering burials placed beneath living spaces. The dead were not separated from the living. They were incorporated into the home itself. Was this practical, symbolic, or something else entirely? Did these people view their houses as living entities, structures that carried memory, ancestry, and identity within their walls? There is little in the way of overt ritual architecture at Aşıklı Höyük, unlike later sites such as Göbekli Tepe. And yet, subtle clues suggest that belief and symbolism were woven into everyday life. The careful treatment of the dead, the consistent rebuilding patterns, and the long-term occupation of the same plots hint at shared ideas about place and continuity, ideas that remain difficult to define with certainty. Some more speculative interpretations emerge from these patterns. A few researchers wonder whether the settlement reflects an early form of spatial knowledge passed down through generations, an understanding of thermal efficiency, airflow, and structural stability that was never written, only practiced. Others suggest that the tight clustering of homes may have served social or psychological purposes, reinforcing cooperation in an environment where survival depended on collective effort. Still, much remains unresolved. There is no clear evidence of centralized leadership, yet the settlement functioned for nearly 1,000 years. There is no monument proclaiming belief, yet the treatment of space and the dead implies shared values. How were decisions made? How was knowledge transmitted? And why did this community eventually abandon the site? Today, Aşıklı Höyük rests quietly beneath the Anatolian sky, its stone foundations exposed but its deeper meanings still concealed. It offers no dramatic ruins, no single moment of awe, only the slow accumulation of human choices frozen in earth. Perhaps that is its greatest mystery. In one of humanity's earliest attempts at settled life, did these builders already understand something about community, place, and endurance that we are only beginning to recognize again? From the quiet stone foundations of Aşıklı Höyük, where early communities first tested the boundaries of permanence and shared life, the story continues west, toward the rugged edges of the Adriatic world. Here, the landscape rises and folds into limestone hills, shaped by wind, salt, and time. On one of these elevations, overlooking the Istrian Peninsula, stands Monkodonja, a prehistoric hill fort whose walls still trace the outline of an ancient ambition. The approach to Monkodonja is gradual but deliberate. As the path climbs, the land opens outward, revealing views that stretch from inland valleys to the distant shimmer of the sea. It is a commanding position, chosen with care. The hilltop itself is encircled by massive stone walls, built without mortar, their blocks fitted together with striking precision. Even in ruin, they suggest strength, planning, and an intimate knowledge of stone. Monkodonja dates to the Bronze Age, roughly between 1800 and 1200 BCE. It is one of the largest and best-preserved hill forts in the region, part of a wider network of fortified settlements known as Gradaine. Archaeologists generally interpret these sites as defensive centers, places of refuge, authority, and control in a landscape marked by competition and uncertainty. Yet Monkodonja resists simple classification. The fortification system is complex. Multiple concentric walls enclose the hilltop, creating distinct zones within. The outer walls are thick and imposing, while inner enclosures suggest areas of specialized activity. At the highest point, traces of large structures hint at communal or elite spaces. The layout feels intentional, hierarchical, but the nature of that hierarchy remains unclear. Excavations have revealed well-planned entrances, carefully aligned gateways, and stone-paved paths guiding movement through the settlement. This was not an improvised refuge hastily built in times of danger. It was a long-term project requiring sustained labor, coordination, and resources. The scale alone raises questions. What threat justified such investment, and what kind of society could maintain it? Mainstream interpretations point to defense and visibility. From Monkodonja, one can survey vast stretches of land and sea. Control of movement, trade routes, and resources seems likely. The Bronze Age Adriatic was a connected world, with metals, amber, and ceramics moving across long distances. Monkodonja may have served as a strategic node in these networks, a place where goods were stored, exchanged, or protected. Yet there is more to the site than military logic. Evidence suggests that Monkodonja was not continuously inhabited. Periods of intense use alternate with phases of abandonment. This rhythm challenges the idea of a permanently occupied fortress. Was it a seasonal center, activated during times of trade, ritual, or conflict? Or did its role shift over generations, adapting to changing needs and beliefs? The architecture itself invites closer scrutiny. The stone blocks, some weighing several tons, were quarried and transported without the aid of iron tools or wheeled vehicles. Their placement shows an understanding of weight distribution and stability that seems advanced for the time. How was this knowledge acquired and transmitted? Was it the work of local builders, or did it reflect techniques shared across regions through cultural exchange? Within the walls, domestic structures appear relatively modest. There is little evidence of the kind of dense, everyday life seen in long-term settlements. Instead, the interior feels curated, organized, open in places, almost ceremonial. This has led some researchers to suggest that Monkodonja may have functioned as more than a stronghold. Perhaps it was also a gathering place, a seat of authority, or a symbolic center anchoring surrounding communities. More speculative interpretations emerge when considering the fort's relationship to the landscape. The alignment of walls and entrances appears to respond not only to terrain, but to sightlines and horizons. Certain points offer framed views of the sea or the rising sun. Are these coincidences of topography or intentional design? Could Monkodonja have held cosmological significance, its elevated position linking earth and sky? Comparisons are sometimes drawn to other Bronze Age centers across Europe, Mycenaean citadels, alpine hill forts, and coastal strongholds. Yet Monkodonja does not fully resemble any of them. It stands apart, both familiar and anomalous. Its walls speak the language of power, but its silence leaves that power undefined. There is also the question of its decline. By the late Bronze Age, Monkodonja was largely abandoned. No clear signs of violent destruction have been found. The walls were not breached, the site not burned. It seems to have been left behind deliberately. Was this due to shifting trade routes, environmental change, or social transformation? Or did the meaning of the hill fort itself fade as new forms of organization emerged? Local legends, passed down long after the builders were forgotten, speak of ancient giants and lost peoples. While these stories offer no historical evidence, they reflect a lingering sense that Monkodonja was never an ordinary place. Even today, standing among its walls, the scale feels slightly out of proportion to what is known of the society that built it. Archaeology provides fragments, pottery shards, tools, wall lines, but no definitive narrative. The site offers structure without voice, form without explanation. Each stone seems to hold a decision, a purpose, now just beyond recovery. As the sun lowers over the Adriatic and shadows stretch across the hilltop, Monkodonja returns to stillness. Its walls continue to watch the land below, just as they did thousands of years ago. Whether fortress, center of power, or something more symbolic, its true role remains unresolved. And perhaps that is the enduring question. Was Monkodonja built only to protect a people, or to project an idea that time itself has yet to fully reveal? As the sun dips behind the limestone ridges of Istria, leaving Monkodonja's walls bathed in fading gold, the narrative of human ingenuity and ritual slowly shifts northward across the seas and islands of Europe. From the Adriatic highlands we move to the windswept glens and lochs of Scotland, where ancient stones rise from peat and grass, silently marking the passage of millennia. Among these remnants stands Corrimony chambered cairn, a site that blends architecture, astronomy, and the unknown in a single, enigmatic form. Nestled in the glen of Corrimony, near the rugged slopes of Glen Urquhart, the cairn sits amid a scattering of standing stones, their rough silhouettes etched against the highland sky. From a distance, it appears as a modest mound, unremarkable among the natural undulations of the landscape. But as one approaches, its features emerge: a hooded entrance, carefully arranged orthostats, and the faint but deliberate traces of a surrounding stone circle. This is no ordinary burial site. Every angle, every alignment suggests design, intention, and a memory of practices lost to time. Corrimony dates to the Neolithic, roughly between 4000 and 3000 BCE, a period when communities across Britain were experimenting with monumental architecture and ritual expression. The cairn itself is a chambered type, its interior passage leading to a small burial chamber, roofed by massive stone slabs. Excavations have revealed the remains of multiple individuals, often placed with care and accompanied by fragments of pottery and flint tools. These were not random deposits. Each burial appears deliberate, suggesting social or spiritual significance beyond the act of interment. Yet, what immediately captivates the observer is not the human remains, but the arrangement of stones surrounding the cairn. The hooded facade, a feature shared with several other highland cairns, frames the entrance in a manner that seems almost ceremonial, and beyond the cairn lies the faint outline of a stone circle, partially eroded by time. Did these stones mark the solar or lunar cycles, mapping the movement of the sky onto the earth below? Or were they intended for something else? Ritual performance, territorial claims, or a symbolic connection to ancestors? The stones themselves offer no explanation, only quiet testimony to human intent. The cairn's orientation is equally compelling. The passage is aligned in a way that captures the light at certain times of the year, illuminating the chamber in a narrow beam. Winter or summer solstice, autumn equinox? Scholars debate the specifics, but the precision is undeniable. The builders understood not only how to shape stone, but also how to engage with celestial cycles. How did these early communities develop such knowledge, and to what end? Was it purely symbolic, a way to structure ritual around the seasons, or did it serve a more practical function, perhaps connected to agricultural planning or social cohesion? Corrimony also raises questions about scale and labor. Constructing the cairn required the movement of massive stones, some weighing several tons, across uneven terrain without the benefit of iron tools or wheeled transport. This speaks to coordinated effort, communal organization, and perhaps specialized knowledge. Were these tasks undertaken by a single extended community, or did people converge from distant regions to participate in a shared endeavor? And if so, what social, spiritual, or political forces brought them together? The site invites speculation in subtler ways as well. The combination of chambered cairn and surrounding stone circle is not unique, but remains rare. It suggests a blending of funerary and ceremonial architecture, hinting at complex belief systems that left few traces beyond stone and soil. Some researchers propose that these structures encoded cosmological knowledge, oral histories, or even early forms of territorial demarcation. Others wonder whether the hooded cairns mark a kind of threshold, a liminal space connecting the living and the dead, the temporal and the eternal. Yet much about Corrimony resists explanation. There are no written records, no inscriptions, no accompanying artifacts that fully clarify the rituals performed here. The cairn stands in silence, weathered by wind and rain, its chamber dark and cool, its stones worn but resilient. Time has obscured the details of how life, death, and ceremony intertwined in this place. Were the burials and stone alignments expressions of power, devotion, memory, or something we cannot yet grasp? Even the stone circle itself presents questions. Its alignment with the cairn suggests intentionality, but erosion and shifting soils obscure its original layout. Was the circle concentric, elliptical, or irregular? Did it once contain wooden posts, now vanished, complementing the stone in ways we cannot reconstruct? And if the circle was indeed a place of gathering, What forms of performance, ritual, or observation took place there? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. Walking among the hooded cairn and the scattered stones, it is easy to feel the weight of millennia pressing quietly from the earth. Corrimony does not boast monumental height or gilded decoration. Its power lies in subtlety, in the careful placement of stones, in alignment with the sky, in the deliberate shaping of communal space. Every choice reflects intention, yet every answer is layered in uncertainty. Perhaps this is the enduring allure of Corrimony chambered cairn. It is a place where human ingenuity, ritual, and memory converge, yet refuse to be fully understood. The cairn invites reflection, a meditation on continuity and impermanence, on the traces left behind by those who came before. Standing at the threshold of the hooded entrance, one cannot help but wonder, what did these early communities see when they looked outward across the glen? And what did they hope to see or communicate within the quiet, enduring heart of the cairn? The stones offer no reply, only the promise of questions that remain, patiently waiting beneath the Scottish sky. From the misted glens of Scotland, where Corrimony's hooded cairn quietly guards its secrets, our journey moves south once again, this time across the Mediterranean to the rugged, sun-baked hills of Sardinia. Here, the island's Bronze Age landscapes conceal traces of human ambition that challenge conventional understanding. Among these ancient sites, Monte Baranta rises, a hill marked by one of the most enigmatic megalithic constructions in Europe, a massive wall stretching across the ridgeline, commanding the terrain with a silent authority that has endured for millennia. At first sight, Monte Baranta is unassuming. Its slopes are cloaked in scrub and scattered granite boulders, the kind of terrain that blends easily into Sardinia's wild interior. But as one ascends, the stones begin to reveal a deliberate arrangement. A wall, built from massive slabs of local rock, snakes along the ridge, following the contours of the hill with astonishing precision. Some stones are irregular, yet they fit together with care, their sheer weight a testament to human labor and ingenuity. From this vantage, the surrounding valleys and hills stretch outward in every direction, offering expansive views that suggest careful consideration of both terrain and visibility. The wall dates to the Bronze Age, roughly between 1800 and 1200 BCE, a period marked across Sardinia by the rise of the Nuragic culture. While the famous nuraghes, towering stone structures shaped like truncated cones, dominate much of the island's archaeology, Monte Baranta presents a different kind of monument, linear, extensive, and enigmatic. Unlike the nuraghes, which have been interpreted as defensive towers, communal centers, or ritual spaces, this megalithic wall resists easy categorization. Its purpose is debated, and the more one studies it, the less certain its role becomes. At several points along the wall, stones rise to impressive heights, suggesting more than a simple boundary. The construction required moving and arranging massive rocks across uneven terrain without mortar or mechanical tools. How was this achieved? Did the builders use timber levers, ramps, or techniques that have since been lost? The precision and scale indicate planning, cooperation, and technical knowledge that may surpass what we typically associate with Bronze Age communities in this region. Mainstream archaeology often views the wall as defensive, part of a fortification system, or as a territorial marker delineating the influence of a nearby nuragic settlement. Its alignment along ridgelines could have provided early warning of approaching groups, while the sheer visual presence of the stones may have projected power and control. Yet there is little evidence of sustained habitation immediately adjacent to the wall. Unlike other defensive structures, which include internal spaces for living or storage, Monte Baranta's wall seems almost purposeless when judged by conventional standards of settlement design. This raises intriguing questions. Was the wall purely symbolic, a statement of human mastery over the landscape, a ritualized boundary, or a sacred threshold between the mundane and the divine? Some researchers speculate that the placement of stones may encode astronomical alignments, marking solstices or lunar cycles in ways that we have yet to fully decipher. If so, the wall was as much a tool for observation and ceremony as it was for defense or demarcation. The megaliths themselves offer subtle clues. Some are shaped to interlock with their neighbors, while others are left roughly hewn. The combination suggests a balance between function and aesthetic, or perhaps between practicality and ritual significance. Was the irregularity intentional, designed to convey meaning or pattern that we no longer recognize? And what of the relationship between Monte Baranta and the surrounding landscape? Unlike isolated monuments, this wall seems to interact with hills, valleys, and ridgelines, its form responding to the land in a dialogue we cannot fully reconstruct. Speculative interpretations abound. Could Monte Baranta have served as a ceremonial boundary, marking sacred territory or the periphery of ritual practice? Did it function as a processional path, guiding groups along a carefully determined route across the hills? Some propose that the wall reflects an understanding of energy, acoustics, or even spiritual topography, ideas that seem extraordinary but cannot be entirely dismissed given the sophistication of contemporaneous Mediterranean cultures. Yet, the mystery endures. Excavations have revealed few artifacts directly associated with the wall itself, leaving us with questions about the people who built it, how they coordinated labor, and what they hoped to achieve. Unlike the Nuragis, whose interiors provide evidence of domestic, defensive, or ritual activities, Monte Baranta communicates through absence as much as presence. Absence of habitation, absence of explicit decoration, absence of certainty. It is a monument that speaks quietly, demanding interpretation through inference, observation, and imagination. Walking along the ridge today, it is easy to sense the intentions of the ancient builders, even if their specific meaning remains elusive. The stones are immovable yet suggestive, forming lines and shapes that challenge assumptions about prehistoric capabilities and societal organization. Their scale implies collective effort, their alignment suggests planning, and their persistence across millennia hints at a significance that transcends ordinary daily needs. Perhaps Monte Baranta is a reminder that human ambition is not always visible in grand towers or monumental temples. Sometimes it manifests as lines drawn across the land, as labor invested in the landscape itself, as choices encoded in stone that only future generations can attempt to decipher. Its walls endure, watching the same hills and valleys that their builders once surveyed, yet they offer no direct answers. And so we are left to wonder, was Monte Baranta a defensive statement, a ceremonial path, an astronomical marker, or something even more enigmatic, now lost to memory? Each possibility opens new questions about Bronze Age Sardinia, its people, and their understanding of the world. Standing at the foot of the wall, tracing its megalithic course across the ridge, one cannot help but feel that the story is only partially revealed, and that the true purpose of Monte Baranta remains waiting patiently within the stones themselves. From the rugged hills of Sardinia, where the massive stones of Monte Baranta rise silently above the landscape, our journey moves eastward across the Mediterranean, arriving on the sun-drenched island of Majorca. Here, the rolling plains and low ridges conceal traces of a culture as enigmatic as any we have encountered, the Taliotic people. Among their monuments, some of the most compelling yet least visited are found at Capocorb Vell, a sprawling Taliotic settlement, its stone towers and enclosures quietly testifying to lives lived in rhythm with the land, yet leaving questions that endure millennia later. At first, Capocorb Vell can seem deceptively simple. From a distance, the scattered stone towers, known as talaiots, emerge like shadows across the gently undulating terrain. Closer inspection reveals circular and square towers, carefully constructed with enormous blocks of local limestone, their bases wide and heavy, supporting structures that once soared above the landscape. The settlement spreads across a series of terraces, suggesting deliberate adaptation to both topography and visibility, while open spaces between the talayots hint at enclosures, communal areas, and paths long since faded. Talayots themselves date to the Iron Age, roughly between 1000 and 300 BCE, although some may have earlier origins, tied to Bronze Age predecessors. Capocorb Vell is unusual in its scale. Multiple talayots arranged across terraces, connected by stone walls and enclosures that suggest both defense and social organization. Yet, unlike larger, more famous sites on the island, Capocorb Vell has been comparatively little studied, leaving much to interpretation. Its quiet isolation preserves an intimacy, a sense of human presence etched into stone but largely hidden from modern eyes. Archaeologists generally interpret talayots as watchtowers, defensive structures, or social markers, signaling control over territory and movement. The circular towers at Capocorb Vell often stand within or adjacent to enclosures that could have housed livestock, food stores, or gathering spaces. Yet the construction of these towers is labor-intensive. Enormous stones lifted and fitted with remarkable precision without the benefit of advanced machinery. How did the talayotic builders coordinate such efforts? What knowledge guided their hands in shaping stone, balancing it, and aligning it across uneven terrain? The placement of the towers also invites deeper scrutiny. Some appear positioned along sightlines, potentially linking different parts of the settlement or even other nearby sites. Could these lines of sight have served strategic purposes, warning of approaching groups? Or might they have held ritual significance, marking celestial events or seasonal changes? The talayotic culture left no written records, no inscriptions to clarify intent. What we see is the result: stone carefully placed, aligned, and preserved, silently inviting interpretation. Capocorb Vell also challenges assumptions about scale and hierarchy. The towers vary in size, some imposing, others modest, suggesting differences in function or status. Yet there is little evidence of centralization. No single tower dominates in a way that clearly signals a ruler or elite residence. Does this imply a society organized more horizontally, through shared effort and communal oversight, rather than through the concentration of power? Or are the social hierarchies simply hidden within architectural subtleties we have yet to decode? Inside the enclosures and among the talayots, small finds, pottery fragments, stone tools, and evidence of domestic activity suggest everyday life existed alongside monumental construction. Yet the connection between these spaces remains mysterious. Were the talayots primarily functional, ceremonial, or both? Did they serve as markers of identity and belonging, visible symbols of a shared culture? Or were they practical tools for managing resources and defense? Perhaps they were all of these things, in a balance that is now lost to memory. Speculative interpretations extend beyond the practical. Some researchers suggest that Capocorb Vell may have incorporated astronomical or calendrical knowledge. Certain talayots and alignments appear to correlate with the rising or setting sun during solstices or equinoxes. If intentional, these arrangements hint at a sophisticated awareness of celestial cycles and their significance to agricultural planning, ritual, or social cohesion. Could the talayotic builders have encoded knowledge in stone, linking human activity with the movements of the heavens? The wall enclosures at Capocorb Vell also provoke questions. Unlike the massive linear walls of Monte Baranta, these structures are shorter, sometimes partial, curving to follow the land rather than imposing an obvious barrier. Were they defensive, symbolic, or designed to guide movement, both human and animal, within the settlement? And why were some towers and enclosures left deliberately open, their intended function obscured? Even the absence of evidence becomes meaningful. There are no lavish burials, no elaborate artifacts, no inscriptions to tell us who lived here, how decisions were made, or what spiritual beliefs guided daily life. What survives is the architecture itself, stone arranged with intent, terraces shaped to the landscape, enclosures linking towers in ways that suggest both practicality and meaning. It is a story told through omission as much as construction, offering hints but withholding certainty. Walking through Capocorb Vell today, one feels the rhythm of the settlement long after its inhabitants departed. The taliots stand as quiet sentinels, marking space, time, and human endeavor. The terraces and enclosures speak of labor, organization, and vision, yet the absence of clear answers heightens the sense of mystery. What did these towers mean to the people who built them? How did Capocorb Vell fit within a wider network of taliotic settlements on Majorca and across the Balearic Islands? And what knowledge, skills, or beliefs were encoded in the stone, now almost imperceptible to modern eyes? Capocorb Vell reminds us that not all ancient monuments are meant to dominate through scale or decoration. Sometimes their power lies in subtlety, in the quiet persistence of stone across centuries, in patterns and alignments that speak more to understanding than spectacle. Standing among the taliots, tracing the outlines of enclosures and walls, it is impossible not to sense a human presence, an intention frozen in stone, waiting for observation and interpretation. And so, as the sun dips behind the distant hills, casting long shadows across the terraces and towers, we are left to wonder, were these taliots primarily functional, symbolic, or something entirely different? Did they serve as watchpoints, ceremonial markers, or perhaps as both, bridging practical needs with spiritual insight? The stones themselves offer no answers, only the enduring invitation to look closer, to question, and to imagine the lives and knowledge of the people who shaped this landscape so long ago. From the sun-warmed terraces of Majorca, where the taliots of Capocorb Vell stand as silent witnesses to Bronze and Iron Age life, our journey continues eastward, across the deserts and mountains of the Arabian Peninsula. Here, in the rugged expanse of the Hajar Mountains, Jebel Hafeet rises, a limestone peak that has long dominated the landscape of the modern United Arab Emirates. At its base and along its lower slopes lies one of the most enigmatic prehistoric necropolises in the region, the Jebel Hafeet tombs. Quiet, unassuming, and ancient, these burial sites invite reflection on a civilization whose sophistication and intentions remain only partially understood. The tombs themselves are deceptively simple at first glance. From the valley below, they appear as low, circular stone mounds scattered across the arid foothills. Yet, as one approaches, the scale and precision of the construction become apparent. Each tomb is composed of carefully arranged stones forming a ring, often enclosing a central burial pit. Some mounds are modest, barely visible above the desert floor, while others span several meters in diameter, indicating a variation in importance or status among those interred. The stones, though weathered by millennia of wind and sun, remain in place, testimony to both durability and the deliberate hands that shaped them. The Jebel Hafeet tombs date to the Bronze Age, roughly between 3,200 and 2,600 BCE, a period associated with the Hafeet culture. These tombs represent some of the earliest evidence of organized burial practices in the region, marking a significant shift from simple graves to more monumental expressions of memory and social identity. Excavations have revealed skeletal remains, often accompanied by ceramics, beads, and occasional tools, suggesting ritualized care for the dead. Yet beyond these practical and cultural explanations, the tombs raise questions that challenge our understanding of early societies in this part of the world. One striking aspect of the tombs is their placement. Unlike settlements that cluster near water or fertile soil, many of the Jebel Hafeet tombs are situated on slopes and ridges, slightly removed from habitation sites. Their positioning commands sweeping views of the surrounding desert and plains, as if the dead were granted a perpetual watch over the living. Was this placement symbolic, linking the deceased with the vastness of the landscape? Did it reflect spiritual beliefs, a form of ancestor veneration, or an early attempt to demarcate territory through the presence of the dead? The construction itself prompts further intrigue. The circular walls, while seemingly simple, demonstrate precise understanding of balance and stability. Stones are carefully selected and arranged, creating durable forms that have withstood erosion and shifting sands for thousands of years. Transporting and positioning these rocks without advanced tools implies coordination, labor, and technical knowledge that hint at social organization beyond what is immediately visible in the archaeological record. How were these efforts organized? And what motivated such sustained attention to the dead in an environment as challenging as the Hajar Mountains? Patterns among the tombs suggest intentional design at a larger scale. Some are aligned along ridgelines, others grouped in clusters that may reflect family ties or social hierarchies. Certain orientations correspond roughly to cardinal directions, though the significance of these alignments remains debated. Were the builders marking celestial events, the movement of the sun or stars, or using orientation to imbue the tombs with spiritual or protective qualities? These possibilities linger in the margins of interpretation, teasing but not confirming a deeper understanding. There are also more speculative aspects. Some researchers have suggested that the tombs reflect knowledge of astronomy, topography, or symbolic mapping of the landscape that transcends practical necessity. Could the Hafeet culture have encoded information about roots, seasonal changes, or spiritual cosmology in the placement of their tombs? Might these low stone mounds have served as markers not just for the deceased, but for the living, a guide across the harsh terrain, a subtle link between geography and human consciousness? The artifacts recovered from the tombs, beads, ceramics, and occasional metal items, offer glimpses into daily life, trade, and technology, but they cannot fully explain the human intentions behind the construction. No inscriptions survive, no written records reveal beliefs or social codes. Instead, what remains is the architecture itself. Simple in form, yet complex in implication, silent in its testimony, yet insistent in its presence. Each tomb is a question posed across time, inviting us to consider both practical necessity and spiritual intent. Walking among the Jebel Hafeet tombs today, the quiet of the desert emphasizes their isolation and endurance. The stones rise gently from the sand, their circular forms echoing human hands and thought. Yet, the meaning of these choices is obscured by the passage of time. The scale, precision, and distribution of the tombs suggest not merely local significance, but a world view in which landscape, community, and the dead were intimately connected. How did these people perceive life and death? What principles guided their placement, construction, and ongoing maintenance? And what aspects of their knowledge, now lost, allowed them to create structures so enduring in an unforgiving environment? The tombs of Jebel Hafeet remind us that monumental human achievement is not always expressed through towering edifices or elaborate ornamentation. Sometimes it emerges in subtle, enduring gestures, stone rings that define a sacred space, the careful orientation of a mound, the organization of an acropolis across the desert floor. Their simplicity belies sophistication, and their survival hints at intent far beyond immediate survival or practicality. As the desert sun sinks behind the jagged ridges of Jebel Hafeet, casting long shadows across the stone circles, the tombs stand in quiet witness to millennia of human presence. They offer glimpses of ritual, social organization, and interaction with the landscape, yet they leave us with profound uncertainty. What did the builders hope to communicate, protect, or preserve? What knowledge of the world, of life, death, and the cosmos guided their hands? The stones themselves do not answer, only endure, waiting silently for those who would attempt to unravel their mysteries, and reminding us that some questions remain as timeless as the desert winds themselves. From the sun-scorched deserts of the UAE, where the Jebel Hafeet tombs silently mark millennia of human ritual and memory, our journey moves northward, across the rugged landscapes of the Caucasus to the fertile valleys of eastern Georgia. Here, carved directly into the sandstone cliffs above the Metkvari River, lies Uplistsikhe, a sprawling rock-cut city that seems to defy the boundaries between nature, architecture, and human ingenuity. Unlike isolated monuments or simple settlements, Uplistsikhe presents a vision of urbanism etched from stone, a labyrinth of caves and passages that hints at a civilization deeply attuned to its environment, yet leaving questions that remain unresolved. Approaching Uplistsikhe, the city does not immediately reveal its full scale. From the valley below, the cliff face appears ordinary, a rugged sandstone ridge shaped by wind and rain over millennia. But as one ascends, the signs of human intervention emerge, a network of carved staircases, terraces, and chambers that seem to grow organically from the rock. The facades are uneven, yet deliberate, blending naturally with the cliff while simultaneously asserting a human presence that is both subtle and commanding. Every ledge, every doorway, and every chamber conveys careful planning, an awareness of topography, and a mastery of stone that is both practical and aesthetic. Uplistsikhe's origins stretch back to at least the first millennium BCE, though some evidence suggests the site may have been occupied even earlier. Its rock-cut structures encompass dwellings, ceremonial halls, storage rooms, and communal spaces, interconnected by a maze of tunnels and corridors. This is not a simple cave settlement. It is an entire urban organism carved into living rock, a city that rose in response to both environmental and social imperatives. The scale of labor required to create such a network is staggering, raising questions about the organization, knowledge, and motivation of its builders. Mainstream interpretations emphasize the site's strategic location and multifunctional design. Uplistsikhe overlooks the Metkvari River, offering both defense and visibility across key trade routes linking the Caucasus to the Black Sea. Its terraced layout allowed for the segregation of spaces, residential, religious, and administrative, while also responding to the contours of the cliff. Yet, despite these practical considerations, the city retains a sense of mystery. Its corridors twist and narrow unexpectedly, chambers open into voids that appear almost ceremonial, and the placement of certain halls suggests a knowledge of light, acoustics, or processional movement that goes beyond mere shelter. One striking feature is the blend of domestic and ritual architecture. Carved rock halls contain niches that may have housed altars, hearths, or ritual objects. Some chambers appear to have been designed to capture sunlight or frame views of the valley below. Were these choices symbolic, functional, or both? And what principles guided the selection of which areas to carve first, and which to leave open to the natural cliff? The very structure of Uplistsikhe seems to encode decision-making, social organization, and cosmological awareness, yet the logic behind it remains partially obscured. The rock-cut streets and stairways reveal another layer of complexity. Their alignment often follows natural fractures in the sandstone, yet they also guide movement across the site in a deliberate manner. This suggests an intimate understanding of both the geology and the social needs of the community. Was Uplistsikhe designed to accommodate hundreds or even thousands of inhabitants? Or was its scale partly symbolic, a demonstration of power, cohesion, or religious significance? Did the people who lived here perceive their city as a permanent urban organism, or as a dynamic, ever-adapting structure shaped by both human and environmental forces? Speculative theories surrounding Uplistsikhe arise from its unusual combination of scale, complexity, and adaptation to the cliff. Some researchers propose that the city's layout may encode astronomical or calendrical knowledge, aligning certain chambers or passages with solstices, equinoxes, or other celestial events. Others wonder whether the design reflects principles of acoustics or light manipulation, intended to enhance rituals or convey a sense of awe. While these interpretations remain debated, they underscore the sophistication evident in the rock-cut urbanism of Uplistsikhe, a sophistication that seems almost ahead of its time. Archaeological evidence provides tantalizing but incomplete glimpses into daily life. Pottery fragments, tools, and occasional inscriptions suggest trade, craftsmanship, and social hierarchy. Yet these artifacts illuminate only part of the story. They hint at a population capable of planning, engineering, and sustaining complex communal life within a challenging environment. Yet they leave unanswered questions about governance, belief systems, and the knowledge networks that allowed this city to thrive for centuries. Walking through the carved corridors today, one senses a dialogue between human intent and natural formation. Each chamber and stairway carries traces of labor, decision-making, and adaptation to the cliff face, yet many passages remain mysterious, their original function unclear. Was Uplistsikhe primarily defensive, a refuge from external threats? Or was it a ceremonial center, a hub for trade and social gathering, or perhaps all of these at once? Its layered complexity resists singular explanation, inviting ongoing investigation and reflection. Uplistsikhe's enduring intrigue lies in its combination of permanence and mystery. The city demonstrates an ability to manipulate natural forms to human ends, a knowledge of construction and spatial organization that remains impressive even today. Yet it also preserves ambiguity, a labyrinth of stone where practical function, ritual meaning, and social design intertwine, leaving modern observers to ponder the intentions behind each carved step and chamber. As sunlight shifts across the sandstone facades, casting shadows that elongate along the terraces and tunnels, Uplistsikhe remains a silent testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and adaptation. Its walls, stairways, and halls speak of lives lived in dialogue with the rock, yet they offer no complete narrative. What knowledge guided the builders? How were labor, skill, and purpose coordinated across generations? And what secrets of social structure, ritual, or cosmology lie hidden within its labyrinthine passages, waiting to be revealed? The city carved in stone endures patiently, holding its mysteries in the light and shadow of Georgia's ancient landscape. From the carved corridors and terraced chambers of Uplistsikhe, where human ingenuity etched a city into living rock, our exploration moves higher into Georgia's rugged interior, to a landscape dominated by steep ridges and rolling foothills. Here, perched atop a rocky promontory, stands Abuli Fortress, a cyclopean hill fort whose enormous stone walls echo with the memory of a Bronze Age civilization, yet leave as many questions as they answer. Unlike the intricacy of rock-cut urbanism, Abuli impresses through scale, weight, and presence, a monument of stone that speaks to both practical defense and an enduring mystery about the people who raised it. From a distance, Abuli appears almost mythical. The hilltop is crowned with immense, irregular boulders carefully fitted together to form walls that curve along the natural contours of the ridge. Some stones measure several meters in length, their sheer mass hinting at the effort required to quarry, transport, and position them without advanced tools or machinery. The construction seems deliberately imposing, a statement of permanence and power that rises from the landscape like a natural extension of the mountain itself. One cannot help but wonder, What drove the builders to move such colossal stones, and what skills and knowledge were necessary to shape and assemble them with such enduring precision? Abuli Fortress dates to the Bronze Age, roughly between 1500 and 1000 BCE, a period when highland communities across the Caucasus were consolidating power, establishing settlements, and engaging in trade and warfare. Archaeologists identify Abuli as part of a network of hill forts that served strategic, defensive, and perhaps symbolic purposes. Its location is commanding, overseeing valleys below and routes that may have linked inland settlements with distant trade corridors. Yet unlike smaller, more utilitarian fortifications, Abuli's scale suggests additional functions: a site of ritual significance, a territorial marker, or a display of communal strength designed to inspire awe. The walls themselves are staggering. Massive boulders are stacked without mortar, forming barriers that are at once rough and remarkably stable. Some sections display careful interlocking of stones, while others appear almost chaotic, as though the builders responded to the natural topography rather than imposing a uniform plan. What determined these variations? Were they functional choices, artistic expressions, or perhaps reflections of different construction phases over generations? The fortress embodies both control and adaptation, a balance between human intention and the contours of the land. Within the enclosure, the evidence of habitation is sparse but telling. Terraces, platforms, and rudimentary foundations hint at domestic spaces or storage areas, but there is little sign of permanent, densely populated settlement. This raises intriguing questions. Was Abuli occupied continuously, or was it a temporary refuge, activated in times of threat or ceremony? Did the people who built it perceive it primarily as a defensive stronghold, a social gathering place, or as a symbolic anchor for their community and territory? Cyclopean construction, as seen at Abuli, often prompts speculation about the organizational capabilities of Bronze Age societies. Moving and positioning stones of such magnitude required planning, labor coordination, and perhaps specialized knowledge of leverage, weight distribution, and stability. Did the builders develop this expertise locally, through generations of trial and refinement, or was it influenced by wider knowledge networks connecting communities across the Caucasus and beyond? The sheer scale of the construction challenges modern assumptions about Bronze Age capabilities, suggesting that these societies were both sophisticated and ambitious in ways that remain underappreciated. Some interpretations extend into the symbolic and ceremonial. The elevated position of the fortress, the visibility of its walls across valleys, and its commanding orientation imply more than defensive intent. Could Abuli have served as a focal point for communal gatherings, rituals, or seasonal observances? Were its walls meant to assert dominion over the land, communicate lineage or power, or provide a spatial anchor for a shared cultural identity? The answers are obscured by time, leaving room for speculation that respects the evidence without straying into sensationalism. The fortress also invites reflection on human interaction with landscape. Its design appears responsive to the natural contours of the hill, following ridge lines and adapting to slopes, while simultaneously imposing a human order on the terrain. Was this an aesthetic choice, a practical strategy for stability and defense, or a symbolic act demonstrating the integration of human and natural worlds? How did the builders perceive the relationship between themselves, their environment, and the people who might approach the fortress from the valleys below? Despite extensive study, much about Abuli remains enigmatic. Excavations have revealed fragments of pottery, tools, and evidence of fire, yet the full scope of life within its walls is elusive. We do not know how decisions were made, how labor was organized, or the full range of purposes the site served. Its cyclopean walls endure as a testament to human effort and ingenuity, yet they communicate only through form, scale, and placement, silent markers of intention whose meaning is partially lost to time. Walking among Abuli's towering stones today, one cannot help but feel the deliberate weight of the past pressing against the present. The fortress speaks of labor, vision, and organization, yet it also preserves ambiguity. It is functional and symbolic, practical and monumental, real and enigmatic. The questions it raises are profound. What social structures allowed the creation of such massive constructions? What belief systems informed their placement, design, and maintenance? And what knowledge, technical, astronomical, or otherwise, was encoded in the fortress that we have yet to decode? Abuli Fortress reminds us that monumental human achievement is not always recorded in writing or ornamentation. Sometimes it is measured in the weight of stone moved, the precision of placement, and the enduring presence of architecture designed to outlast generations. Its walls, terraces, and platforms endure, challenging modern understanding, and inviting us to reflect on the capabilities, intentions, and knowledge of the people who built them. In the quiet of the Georgian highlands, Abuli stands, a sentinel of stone, leaving us to wonder what secrets it has preserved for millennia, and what might still lie hidden within its colossal walls. From the towering cyclopean walls of Abuli Fortress, where massive stones mark the ambition and ingenuity of Bronze Age highland communities in Georgia, our journey now turns southward, across the Red Sea and into the rugged landscapes of the Horn of Africa. Here, in the highlands of Ethiopia, lie the lesser-known Dungur stonehouses, ancient terrace structures that rise from steep hillsides, carved and built with precision, yet largely overlooked by the broader sweep of history. Unlike monumental fortresses or vast necropolises, Dungur offers a quieter, subtler testament to human adaptation, ingenuity, and architectural skill that continues to invite questions about its builders and purpose. Approaching Dungur, one is immediately struck by the harmony between human construction and the surrounding landscape. The stone terraces cling to steep slopes, following the contours of the hills with an almost organic logic. From below, they appear as a layered patchwork of platforms, walls, and stone foundations that rise in graduated steps, gradually revealing a network of buildings interconnected by narrow pathways and staircases. Unlike the imposing scale of a fortress, the Dungur structures are intimate in proportion, yet deliberate in design. Each stone is carefully fitted, each wall precisely aligned, suggesting a community deeply familiar with its environment and the demands of building on steep terrain. The Dungur stone houses are often dated to the early 1st millennium CE, though their origins may extend further back, into a period when the Aksumite kingdom and other highland societies were experimenting with urbanization, terrace agriculture, and monumental architecture. These terraces are more than agricultural features. They support multi-roomed buildings, courtyards, and perhaps ceremonial spaces, hinting at complex social structures and long-term settlement. Some scholars suggest that these stone houses were residential hubs for extended families or elite groups, while others propose that they served as administrative or ritual centers integrated with the surrounding terraces and agricultural plots. The construction techniques themselves provoke admiration. Massive stone blocks form the walls, carefully leveled and fitted without mortar, their weight and placement ensuring stability on otherwise precarious slopes. The builders appear to have understood principles of structural integrity, drainage, and erosion control, creating forms that have endured centuries of rain, wind, and seismic activity. How did they acquire this knowledge? Was it learned through generational experience, through shared knowledge networks across highland communities, or perhaps from techniques now lost to history? The arrangement of the terraces raises further questions. Some buildings occupy elevated positions, commanding views of the surrounding valleys, while others cluster together in more protected spaces. Was this a defensive choice, a reflection of social hierarchy, or a combination of both? The terraced design itself may also have served practical purposes, mitigating soil erosion, maximizing arable land, or regulating water flow. But could it also encode symbolic or cosmological meaning, reflecting the community's relationship with the land and the heavens? Excavations at Dungur have revealed pottery, tools, and occasional inscriptions, yet much remains enigmatic. There is little evidence of extensive fortification, and yet the site occupies positions that are both defensible and visually commanding. Were the builders concerned with protection, or was their placement guided by cultural or spiritual principles that we can only speculate upon? The architecture seems to straddle the line between practicality and symbolism, functional design and expressive intent. More subtle mysteries emerge from the construction itself. Some walls exhibit unusually precise angles, while certain terraces align with distant ridgelines or natural features. Could these alignments have served calendrical or ritual purposes, marking seasonal changes or celestial events? Did the community intentionally embed cosmological knowledge into the layout of their homes, terraces, and pathways, as other ancient societies did in regions as distant as the Caucasus, the Mediterranean, or the Arabian Peninsula? The evidence is tantalizing but incomplete, offering patterns without confirmation, hints without explanation. Dungur is also notable for its integration of social and environmental planning. The terraces not only support buildings, but also channel water, protect against erosion, and create microclimates favorable to crops or domestic use. Such multifunctional design suggests a society that understood the interplay of architecture, agriculture, and community life. Yet the scale and sophistication of these terraces challenge assumptions about the technological and organizational capabilities of early highland societies. How was labor organized? What knowledge of geology, hydraulics, and urban planning was necessary to create such enduring structures? Walking among the terraces today, one senses both order and ambiguity. Narrow staircases wind between platforms, walls rise with geometric precision, and doorways hint at spaces once alive with human activity. Yet much of the settlement's purpose remains concealed. Were these terraces primarily domestic spaces, or did they serve ritual or administrative functions as well? Did Dungur stonehouses reflect social hierarchy, collective effort, or a combination of the two? And what beliefs or practices guided the people who built and maintained them for generations? The enduring fascination of Dungur lies in its quiet mystery. Unlike monumental cities or iconic tombs, its story is not proclaimed through grandiosity, but through meticulous adaptation, careful planning, and integration with the natural environment. The terraces invite observation and reflection, encouraging us to consider the knowledge, intentions, and daily lives of the builders. Each stone, each platform, and each wall carries evidence of human thought and effort, yet their full meaning remains elusive. As the sun sets over the Ethiopian highlands, casting long shadows across the terraced slopes of Dungur, the site stands as both testimony and enigma. Its stone houses endure, resilient against time, yet they reveal only fragments of the lives, beliefs, and skills of those who shaped them. What social, spiritual, or practical imperatives guided the construction of these terraces? How did the builders conceive of space, hierarchy, and community in such a challenging environment? And what knowledge, now hidden, allowed them to create structures of lasting stability and enduring elegance? Dungur remains patient and silent, holding its secrets within the contours of stone and earth, inviting us to wonder what might still lie hidden among its terraces. From the terraced stone houses of Dungur, where Ethiopian highlands preserve subtle traces of Bronze Age life, our journey now sweeps northwest across Europe, tracing the long arc of human ingenuity through space and time. we arrive in the rolling, verdant landscapes of northwestern Wales, where the Capel Garmon burial chamber quietly endures, a Bronze Age dolmen whose monumental stones seem almost to rise from the earth itself, commanding attention through simplicity and scale, yet keeping its mysteries firmly intact. Unlike the sprawling terraces of Ethiopia or the massive Cyclopean walls of Georgia, Capel Garmon speaks with quiet solemnity, inviting contemplation of death, ritual, and human intent. From a distance, the site appears deceptively modest, nestled amidst grassy fields and gentle slopes. Yet as one approaches, the scale of the monument becomes clear. Massive capstones rest upon upright orthostats, forming a chamber large enough to house multiple burials. The stones, weathered by millennia of rain and wind, retain the weight and presence of human intention. Their arrangement conveys both stability and ritual, a structure designed to endure while marking a threshold between the world of the living and that of the dead. Even the smallest details, the careful leveling of the supporting stones, the alignment of slabs, suggest planning and precision beyond the demands of mere utility. Capel Garmon is generally dated to the early Bronze Age, roughly between 2500 and 2000 BCE, a period when megalithic tombs proliferated across the British Isles. Excavations have revealed evidence of multiple burials, often accompanied by simple grave goods such as pottery shards, beads, and flint tools. The chamber was not used haphazardly. Rather, each deposition appears deliberate, hinting at social, familial, or ritual frameworks that governed who was buried, when, and how. Yet beyond these practical interpretations lies a deeper mystery. What drove communities to invest immense labor in these constructions, and what beliefs informed their design? The dolmen's form invites reflection. The upright stones support a massive capstone that, in some cases, may weigh several tons. How were these stones transported, lifted, and precisely positioned without metal tools or mechanical assistance? The technical achievement is significant, yet it is inseparable from the symbolic dimension. Standing within or beside the chamber, one senses that this was not merely a repository for the dead, but a carefully conceived space, a liminal zone where the living and the dead, the material and the spiritual, intersected. Orientation is another feature that inspires curiosity. While not as precisely aligned as some contemporaneous sites, the chamber's entrance and internal configuration suggest attention to sightlines, light, and access. Could the builders have intended to capture the path of the sun, or to frame specific views of the surrounding landscape? Were these alignments symbolic, practical, or both? And how might these considerations have interacted with local topography, weather, and the movement of people across the hills and valleys of northwestern Wales? Capel Garmon also raises questions about social organization. Constructing such a dolmen required coordination, labor, and knowledge passed between individuals and generations. Was it the product of a single family, an extended kinship group, or a broader community effort? And did its construction serve to reinforce social cohesion, mark territorial claims, or perform spiritual functions that bound the living together even as it commemorated the dead? The stones themselves offer no answers. Only the persistent impression of human purpose materialized in enduring form. Speculative interpretations naturally emerge. Some researchers propose that dolmens like Capel Garmon were deliberately placed to align with celestial events, such as solstices or lunar cycles, encoding knowledge of time and the heavens within the earthbound architecture. Others suggest that the placement of stones and the internal configuration of chambers may have influenced acoustic or spatial perception, shaping rituals in ways that are now inaccessible to modern observers. Could the chamber have functioned as a space for collective memory, storytelling, or ceremonial gatherings, as well as for burial? The evidence remains incomplete, leaving room for contemplation rather than conclusion. Even small details provoke questions. Traces of wear on certain stones may hint at repeated interaction, while nearby depressions or post holes could indicate ancillary structures now lost. Was Capel Garmon part of a wider network of tombs and ritual sites in the region, forming a landscape of memory and authority? Or was it a more isolated monument, singular in its intention and execution? The ambiguity is part of its enduring power. Walking through the surrounding fields with the massive capstone above and the Welsh sky overhead, it is easy to feel the weight of human presence across time. The chamber embodies both permanence and impermanence. The stones endure, yet the people, their rituals, and their beliefs have largely vanished. Capel Garmon challenges us to consider how Bronze Age communities understood life, death, and the cosmos, and how they translated that understanding into monumental, yet understated architecture. Perhaps what makes Capel Garmon most compelling is its restraint. Unlike towering pyramids or sprawling urban complexes, its message is subtle yet profound. The monument communicates through form, orientation, and scale, rather than through ornamentation or decoration. Every stone suggests deliberation. Every gap and angle invites speculation. It is at once practical and symbolic, monumental yet intimate, a threshold into the past that continues to provoke thought and wonder. As the afternoon light shifts across the verdant Welsh hills, casting long shadows over the capstone and the supporting orthostats, the site stands in quiet testimony. What rituals were enacted here? How did the community perceive the interplay of life, death, and memory within this chamber? And what knowledge, now irretrievably lost, guided the labor, choice of materials, and design of this enduring monument? Capel Garmon offers no answers, only enduring questions, inviting us to reflect on the depth of human ingenuity, belief, and mystery that continues to echo across the British landscape. From the rolling hills and verdant fields of Wales, where Capel Garmon's dolmen stands as a silent testament to Bronze Age ritual and human ingenuity, our journey turns southeast once more, across deserts and mountains, to the stark, expansive landscapes of northern Arabia. Here, far beyond the familiar traces of human settlement, lie Bronze Age cairns, clusters of stone graves scattered across the desert floor, distinct yet intimately linked to the earlier Motilla structures. These cairns, quiet and often overlooked, invite contemplation, markers of mortality, memory, and perhaps ritual, their purpose lingering just beyond the grasp of modern understanding. Approaching the cairns, the desert appears at first endless and unremarkable. Sand, gravel, and occasional rocky outcrops stretch to the horizon, broken only by low ridges that catch the sun in coppery light. Then, slowly, the cairns emerge, circular and rectangular clusters of stones, some standing barely a meter high, others more imposing, forming enigmatic constellations across the plains. Each cairn is unique, some tightly packed, suggesting communal effort, others solitary, echoing isolation. The stones themselves are unworked, gathered from the surrounding terrain, yet deliberately placed with a care that hints at intention and awareness of space, form, and perhaps symbolic meaning. Dating to the Bronze Age, roughly between 3000 and 1500 BCE, these cairns post-date the Mustatills, elongated stone platforms whose ritual and territorial functions have long intrigued archaeologists. While Mustatills are often understood as ceremonial constructions, the cairns seem to reflect another aspect of social life: mortality. Excavations of selected cairns reveal skeletal remains, occasionally accompanied by small artifacts such as beads, pottery fragments, or tools, suggesting that the stones were intended as markers of burial, commemoration, or social memory. Yet the simplicity of the cairns contrasts sharply with their significance, leaving modern observers to ponder what criteria guided their construction, placement and clustering. The arrangement of the cairns is as compelling as their construction. Many occur in loose groups, following natural ridges or subtle undulations of the terrain. Some clusters suggest family or community associations, while others appear aligned along sight lines, ridge lines, or perhaps celestial paths. Were these alignments accidental, practical, or deliberate? Did they mark seasonal movement, sacred territories, or trade routes? And what knowledge informed their placement, encoded in the landscape in ways that may now be partially obscured by shifting sands and the passage of millennia? The stones themselves provoke questions about labor, coordination, and social organization. Although they are unshaped and often modest in size, their deliberate arrangement demonstrates intent and persistence. Even in an environment as harsh and unforgiving as northern Arabia, communities undertook the effort to transport, lift, and place these stones with care, creating structures that have endured for thousands of years. Was this work part of a ritual practice, a social obligation, or a demonstration of collective memory? And how did the people conceptualize the landscape and their place within it, linking death, community, and environment? Beyond the practical and the symbolic, the cairns also suggest more enigmatic possibilities. Could their clustering encode knowledge of the seasons, guiding movement or ritual observance across the desert? Might the orientation of certain cairns align with sunrise or sunset on solstices or equinoxes, reflecting an awareness of celestial cycles? Some clusters appear near water sources or natural landmarks, hinting at the intersection of practical needs and symbolic awareness. Yet the exact significance of these choices remains elusive, resisting easy categorization or explanation. The cairn's quiet presence contrasts with the monumental ambition of mustatils, yet their endurance is no less remarkable. They are modest structures in scale, yet they demand attention through pattern, placement, and persistence. Even their erosion and partial collapse convey something of their age, the environmental forces they have withstood, and the human intentions that raised them in a landscape largely devoid of other markers. They are evidence of lives lived, of care for the dead, and of practices that bridged survival, ritual, and perhaps cosmological understanding. Despite archaeological investigation, much about the cairns remains mysterious. Were they purely burial sites, or did they serve other functions, territorial markers, ceremonial foci, or guides across the desert? Why were some cairns grouped closely while others stand alone, and what principles determined their construction and orientation? Were these clusters the work of single communities, regional networks, or successive generations, maintaining traditions and knowledge across time? Each question opens a window onto possibilities, yet closes the door on certainty. Walking among the cairns today, one senses both absence and presence. The desert stretches around the clusters, empty yet charged with history. The stones themselves are silent witnesses, speaking of labor, intention, and memory, yet offering no clear narrative. Their form, placement, and endurance invite reflection on the ingenuity required to mark the dead in such a landscape, on the beliefs that may have guided their placement, and on the communities that engaged with both life and death across the Bronze Age deserts of Arabia. Perhaps what makes these cairns so compelling is their subtlety. They are not monumental like pyramids or urban like rock-cut cities. Their power lies in restraint, the careful choice of stone, the measured placement across the terrain, and the layering of meaning that remains partially hidden. They are reminders that human expression, even in its simplest forms, can endure, prompting curiosity and reflection long after the people who built them have vanished. As the desert sun sinks behind distant ridges, casting elongated shadows across the cairn clusters, one is left with profound questions. What did these cairns mean to the communities that built them? How did the living interact with these markers of death, and what rituals were performed around them, and what knowledge of landscape, astronomy, or communal practice was encoded in their construction that we are only beginning to glimpse. The cairns endure, patient and silent, holding their secrets in stone and sand, inviting us to look closer, to wonder, and to imagine what still lies hidden beyond the desert horizon. From the stark, windswept deserts of northern Arabia, where Bronze Age cairns mark the memory of generations long past, our journey now arcs across the Mediterranean, arriving on the sun-baked island of Cyprus. Here, nestled in a gently sloping valley, lies the settlement of Chirokitia, a Bronze to Iron Age community whose circular stone houses and carefully planned streets speak to a sophisticated understanding of architecture, society, and human adaptation. Unlike the isolated cairns or monumental hill forts we have explored, Chirokitia presents a vision of communal life preserved in stone, offering glimpses into domestic existence and social organization, yet leaving its deeper mysteries tantalizingly intact. From a distance, Chirokitia appears as a scattering of pale stone shapes that blend with the island's rocky landscape. Upon closer approach, the settlement reveals its intricate layout. Concentric circles of low, circular dwellings clustered along narrow alleys and open courtyards. The walls, built of carefully stacked limestone, reach heights sufficient to provide shelter while retaining remarkable stability. Each house is compact yet meticulously arranged, with small doorways, internal niches, and platforms suggesting storage, workspaces, or even ritual use. The precision of construction implies not only practical knowledge of materials, but also an awareness of communal planning, streets, walls, and dwellings organized to balance privacy, protection, and shared space. Chirokitia flourished between roughly 7,000 and 4,000 BCE, bridging the late Neolithic into the early Bronze Age, though some evidence suggests continuity into the Iron Age. Excavations reveal sophisticated domestic arrangements, hearths for cooking, storage pits for grain, and stone-built benches or platforms that hint at daily routines, social hierarchies, or domestic rituals. Yet, despite the apparent ordinariness of domestic life, Chirokitia's architecture is distinctive. Circular houses, arranged in tight clusters, create a labyrinth of interwoven spaces that communicate organization, cohesion, and possibly symbolic intention. Why did these communities favor round, rather than rectangular, forms? Was it purely functional, to resist seismic forces and optimize space? Or did it reflect cosmological beliefs, social structures, or ritual considerations? The streets of Chirokitia themselves are compelling. Narrow alleys wind between houses, sometimes leading to open courtyards or communal spaces, while other paths appear almost hidden, suggesting a complex choreography of movement within the settlement. Could these pathways have dictated social interaction, guiding neighbors, visitors, and ritual participants in subtle ways? And what can the layout tell us about governance, hierarchy, or communal decision-making? The settlement's form, while practical, also implies intention, a deliberate shaping of both human behavior and social identity. Construction techniques further invite admiration and curiosity. Stones were carefully selected, leveled, and arranged without mortar, creating durable walls that have survived millennia of weathering. The builders clearly understood weight distribution, stability, and local geology. Yet the question remains, how did knowledge of such construction practices emerge in communities of this scale and sophistication? Was it transmitted orally across generations, discovered experimentally, or influenced by wider networks of knowledge across Cyprus and the eastern Mediterranean? Each stone seems to carry both utility and memory, a testament to human ingenuity in an era without written records. Chirokitia also raises questions about adaptation and environmental awareness. The settlement is terraced along the slopes of a valley, a choice likely intended to manage drainage, protect against seasonal flooding, and optimize land use for cultivation nearby. How much of the settlement's design was driven by practical necessity, and how much by social, symbolic, or ritual considerations? Did the inhabitants view their houses as extensions of the natural landscape, integrating daily life, food production, and communal gathering into a seamless experience? Or were these forms primarily dictated by cultural norms that remain opaque to us? Evidence of domestic life is fascinating yet incomplete. Pottery fragments, obsidian blades, and occasional figurines suggest trade, craftsmanship, and ritual activity, yet we know little of belief systems, governance, or interpersonal dynamics. The settlement seems both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary in its functionality as a community living and working together, extraordinary in its precision, organization, and enduring presence. Were these houses strictly for living, or did they host rituals, ceremonies, or observances linked to cycles of time, seasons, or spiritual belief? Speculative interpretations abound. Some scholars have suggested that the circular houses of Chirokitia encode a symbolic worldview, perhaps reflecting celestial cycles, cosmological ideas, or social hierarchies within the circular form itself. Others note that the arrangement of houses, streets, and courtyards may have guided interaction, controlling access, privacy, and communal gathering in ways that reinforced social cohesion or hierarchy. Could Chirokitia represent an early experiment in urbanism, a deliberate fusion of practical habitation, social structure, and symbolic meaning? Or are we reading patterns into what was simply efficient domestic planning? Walking through Chirokitia today, one senses a dialogue between permanence and impermanence. The stones endure, yet the people who lived here, their stories, rituals, and decisions are largely lost. Each circular dwelling, each narrow alleyway, and each open courtyard speaks of thought, care, and effort, yet their deeper meaning is enigmatic. What determined the size and arrangement of homes? How did families, clans, or social groups interact within this compact yet intricately organized space? And what knowledge of construction, social cohesion, or cosmology was embedded in these stones that we are only beginning to understand? Chirokitia is a settlement of subtle power. It does not rely on monumental scale or dramatic location, yet its enduring presence communicates skill, foresight, and community. Its circular homes, tightly clustered terraces, and narrow streets convey lessons in adaptation, organization, and perhaps ritual life, all without a single word preserved. In the interplay of stone, space, and landscape, it challenges us to consider how early communities balanced practical necessity with social cohesion, environmental adaptation, and symbolic expression. As sunlight filters through the valleys of Cyprus, casting shadows across the circular stone walls, the settlement remains patient and silent. It offers glimpses into daily life, communal structure, and architectural ingenuity, yet it leaves the deepest questions unanswered. What principles guided the layout of Chirokitia? How did its inhabitants perceive their world, their place in it, and their relationship with the living and the dead? And what subtle knowledge of construction, social order, or ritual life is preserved here, waiting for those who would seek to read it? Chirokitia endures as both home and mystery, a place of stone, memory, and questions that remain unanswered across the ages. From the sunlit terraces and clustered circular homes of Chirokitia, where Bronze Age communities carved their lives into stone with remarkable care and planning, our journey returns to the misty landscapes of northwestern Europe. Here, on the windswept island of Anglesey, Wales, lies Bryn, Celli, a passage tomb whose stones have silently witnessed thousands of years of human activity. Unlike the clustered domestic settlements of Cyprus, this site speaks of mortality, ritual, and celestial observance, yet its layers of use and adaptation render it enigmatic. Its low mound and winding passage invite closer inspection, hinting at practices that blend the practical with the sacred, the ephemeral with the eternal. From a distance, Bryn Celli appears modest, a low, grassy mound among gently rolling fields. Yet as one draws near, the intricate sophistication of its construction becomes apparent. A narrow, carefully aligned passageway leads into the heart of the tomb, where a chamber of massive stones rests in deliberate arrangement. The capstones, some weighing several tons, form a protective canopy over the interior, while the walls, composed of irregular but carefully fitted orthostats, create a chamber that feels both intimate and monumental. The tomb is more than a repository for the dead. It is a space crafted with precision, attention, and intention, a liminal zone bridging human life and the unknown beyond. Bryn Celli is generally attributed to the late Neolithic, roughly 3000 BCE, yet evidence suggests it was reused and modified during the Bronze Age, indicating continuity of ritual significance across generations. Excavations have revealed human remains, often partial, alongside traces of pottery, flint tools, and other artifacts. The repeated use of the tomb raises intriguing questions. Were these later burials acts of reverence, continuation of ancestral practices, or attempts to reconnect with a sacred past? What motivated communities to return, generation after generation, to this singular place, reinforcing its significance while leaving the meaning elusive to modern observers? The tomb's passage is particularly remarkable for its precise alignment. At sunrise on the summer solstice, sunlight penetrates the narrow entrance and illuminates the chamber's back wall, casting a fleeting glow that would have been visible only for a short period each year. This deliberate orientation suggests an understanding of solar cycles and celestial phenomena, a knowledge that is both practical for marking time and deeply symbolic. Was this alignment intended to mark agricultural cycles, to commemorate the dead, or to facilitate ritual observation? And how did the Neolithic builders acquire the observational knowledge and construction skills necessary to achieve such precision without modern instruments? Inside the chamber, the stones themselves provoke reflection. Each orthostat is carefully chosen and positioned, forming walls that are both functional and symbolic. The capstones above seem to create a protective roof while evoking permanence, an enduring container for both the dead and the living memory of their community. The Bronze Age reuse of the site adds additional layers of intrigue. New burials and deposits were inserted into an already sacred space, creating a palimpsest of human activity over centuries. How did successive communities perceive the original builder's intentions? Were they guided by memory, legend, or ritual obligation? Beyond the physical construction, Bryn Celli inspires speculation about the intersection of social organization, ritual practice, and cosmology. The tomb is part of a wider landscape of megalithic monuments on Anglesey, including stone circles, standing stones, and other chambered tombs. This network of sites suggests that the island's Neolithic and Bronze Age communities may have shared knowledge, coordinated construction, and observed common ritual or cosmological principles. Could the placement of Bryn Celli within this landscape reflect territorial claims, ceremonial roots, or a broader spiritual map, now only partially recoverable through archaeology? Small, often overlooked details intensify the mystery. Carvings on certain stones, subtle depressions, and wear patterns hint at repeated human interaction, while the presence of carefully arranged stones in and around the mound suggests rituals that extended beyond the simple act of burial. Did these practices involve offerings, seasonal ceremonies, or rites of passage? And if so, how were they encoded in the architecture and alignment of the tomb, shaping the experience of the living while honoring the dead? The absence of written records leaves interpretation dependent on spatial and material evidence, leaving questions open rather than resolved. Walking around the mound today, one senses both intimacy and grandeur. The tomb is small enough to enter physically, yet its presence dominates the landscape, a marker of human intention against the vast backdrop of fields, hills, and sky. Standing at the entrance at dawn or dusk, one can imagine the communities of Neolithic and Bronze Age Anglesey watching the sun's rays pierce the passage, participating in rituals that connected them to ancestors, environment, and cosmos. The stones are silent, yet they speak of effort, knowledge, and devotion, preserving human intention in enduring form. Bryn Celli also challenges assumptions about the boundaries between Neolithic and Bronze Age practice. Its reuse suggests continuity of sacred space, yet adaptations hint at changing ritual needs, social structures, or cosmological understanding. How much of the original significance remained intact? How did successive generations reinterpret the tomb's purpose, and what knowledge, now lost, informed their interventions? The chamber embodies both constancy and transformation, holding within its stones evidence of continuity, innovation, and perhaps belief systems that remain opaque. As sunlight filters across the grassy mound, illuminating the passage and casting long shadows across the surrounding fields, Bryn Celli stands as a quiet, enduring witness. Its stones invite reflection on human ingenuity, ritual practice, and the ways societies interact with time, death, and the cosmos. What guided its construction? What motivated its Bronze Age reuse? And what subtle knowledge, astronomical, social, or symbolic, was embedded within the tomb, awaiting those patient enough to observe, to question, and to imagine the lives of those who built, used, and revered this extraordinary monument? The passage tomb endures, silent and inscrutable, offering only glimpses of the mysteries it has preserved across millennia. From the mist-shrouded mound of Bryn Celli, where sunlight once pierced a Neolithic passage to illuminate the sacred heart of a chambered tomb, our journey moves southward across Britain into the undulating hills of Somerset. Here rises Cadbury Castle, a multi-phase hill fort whose enormous earthworks dominate the landscape. Unlike the intimate confines of a passage tomb, Cadbury Castle speaks of scale, defense, and social complexity. Its terraced slopes, deep ditches, and layered ramparts evoke centuries of human occupation and transformation, yet beneath these visible traces lies a deeper mystery. What drove communities across millennia to fortify, adapt, and readapt this singular site? From a distance, Cadbury Castle appears as a natural elevation, a hill rising above the surrounding fields, its silhouette etched against the sky. Yet, as one approaches, the human hand becomes unmistakable. The ramparts are formidable, broad earthen walls reinforced over successive periods, punctuated by ditches that descend sharply into the valleys below. These defenses, immense in scale, required sustained labor and coordination, their construction an expression of both necessity and authority. The fort's size and layered defenses suggest a place of strategic importance, commanding views over the surrounding lowlands, controlling movement along trade or invasion routes, and offering refuge in times of conflict. Archaeological evidence indicates that Cadbury Castle's origins reach back to the late Bronze Age, with occupation continuing through the Iron Age and into early medieval times. Excavations have uncovered traces of roundhouses, storage pits, and defensive ditches alongside pottery, tools, and evidence of metalworking. Each layer reveals a different story, a distinct phase of occupation, adaptation, and modification. How did the priorities of the Bronze Age occupants differ from those of their Iron Age successors? Were these successive communities aware of their predecessors' intentions, or did they impose their own designs upon an inherited landscape? The multi-phase construction of the fort is particularly striking. Ramparts were expanded, ditches deepened, and terraces reshaped across centuries. The site's evolution appears organic yet deliberate, responding to both environmental conditions and social pressures. One can imagine the Bronze Age builders raising the first embankments as protection against raiders or rival clans. Later, Iron Age communities may have expanded these defenses, reorganized internal spaces, or introduced new structures for habitation, ritual, or storage. Each modification is evidence of planning, knowledge, and an intimate understanding of the terrain, yet the exact motivations behind these changes remain elusive. Cadbury Castle's scale also suggests complex social organization, coordinating the labor required to move earth, build walls, and maintain terraces over multiple generations implies hierarchies, leadership, and communication. How was such a workforce organized? Were certain families or clans responsible for construction, maintenance, or oversight? And what role did ritual or symbolic imperatives play in the fort's continued adaptation? Unlike simpler hilltop settlements, Cadbury Castle conveys a consciousness of scale and permanence, a deliberate shaping of both the landscape and human activity within it. Beyond defense and habitation, the site hints at ritual and cosmological significance. Some archaeologists propose that certain ramparts, entrances, or terraces may align with solar or lunar phenomena, perhaps marking seasonal transitions or guiding ceremonial activity. Other researchers have noted the deliberate arrangement of interior spaces, platforms, enclosures, and pathways that may have influenced movement, social interaction, or ritual processions. Could Cadbury Castle have been both a fortress and a ceremonial center, a space where power, protection, and spiritual practice intertwined? And if so, how did its occupants balance these sometimes conflicting demands across generations? The fort's location itself raises further questions. Perched atop a hill yet commanding views across fertile valleys, it combines defensibility with control of trade routes and arable land. Yet its choice may also reflect symbolic considerations, visibility across the landscape, proximity to water, or alignment with natural features. How did Bronze and Iron Age societies conceptualize their relationship to the land? And how did these perceptions guide the construction of monumental sites like Cadbury Castle? Was its prominence a display of authority, a spiritual statement, or both? From the mist-shrouded mound of Bryn, Celli, where sunlight once pierced a Neolithic passage to illuminate the sacred heart of a chambered tomb, our journey moves southward across Britain into the undulating hills of Somerset. Here rises Cadbury Castle, a multi-phase hill fort whose enormous earthworks dominate the landscape. Unlike the intimate confines of a passage tomb, Cadbury Castle speaks of scale, defense, and social complexity. Its terraced slopes, deep ditches, and layered ramparts evoke centuries of human occupation and transformation, yet beneath these visible traces lies a deeper mystery. What drove communities across millennia to fortify, adapt, and readapt this singular site? From a distance, Cadbury Castle appears as a natural elevation, a hill rising above the surrounding fields, its silhouette etched against the sky. Yet, as one approaches, the human hand becomes unmistakable. The ramparts are formidable, broad earthen walls reinforced over successive periods, punctuated by ditches that descend sharply into the valleys below. These defenses, immense in scale, required sustained labor and coordination, their construction an expression of both necessity and authority. The fort's size and layered defenses suggest a place of strategic importance, commanding views over the surrounding lowlands, controlling movement along trade or invasion routes, and offering refuge in times of conflict. Archaeological evidence indicates that Cadbury Castle's origins reach back to the late Bronze Age, with occupation continuing through the Iron Age and into early medieval times. Excavations have uncovered traces of roundhouses, storage pits, and defensive ditches alongside pottery, tools, and evidence of metalworking. Each layer reveals a different story, a distinct phase of occupation, adaptation, and modification. How did the priorities of the Bronze Age occupants differ from those of their Iron Age successors? Were these successive communities aware of their predecessors' intentions, or did they impose their own designs upon an inherited landscape? The multi-phase construction of the fort is particularly striking. Ramparts were expanded, ditches deepened, and terraces reshaped across centuries. The site's evolution appears organic yet deliberate, responding to both environmental conditions and social pressures. One can imagine the Bronze Age builders raising the first embankments as protection against raiders or rival clans. Later, Iron Age communities may have expanded these defenses, reorganized internal spaces, or introduced new structures for habitation, ritual, or storage. Each modification is evidence of planning, knowledge, and an intimate understanding of the terrain, yet the exact motivations behind these changes remain elusive. Cadbury Castle's scale also suggests complex social organization. Coordinating the labor required to move earth, build walls, and maintain terraces over multiple generations implies hierarchies, leadership, and communication. How was such a workforce organized? Were certain families or clans responsible for construction, maintenance, or oversight? And what role did ritual or symbolic imperatives play in the fort's continued adaptation? Unlike simpler hilltop settlements, Cadbury Castle conveys a consciousness of scale and permanence, a deliberate shaping of both the landscape and human activity within it. Beyond defense and habitation, the site hints at ritual and cosmological significance. Some archaeologists propose that certain ramparts, entrances, or terraces may align with solar or lunar phenomena, perhaps marking seasonal transitions or guiding ceremonial activity. Other researchers have noted the deliberate arrangement of interior spaces, platforms, enclosures, and pathways that may have influenced movement, social interaction, or ritual processions. Could Cadbury Castle have been both a fortress and a ceremonial center, a space where power, protection, and spiritual practice intertwined? And if so, how did its occupants balance these sometimes conflicting demands across generations? The fort's location itself raises further questions. Perched atop a hill yet commanding views across fertile valleys, it combines defensibility with control of trade routes and arable land. Yet its choice may also reflect symbolic considerations, visibility across the landscape, proximity to water, or alignment with natural features. How did Bronze and Iron Age societies conceptualize their relationship to the land? And how did these perceptions guide the construction of monumental sites like Cadbury Castle? Was its prominence a display of authority, a spiritual statement, or both? Excavations reveal tantalizing details, yet many aspects remain ambiguous. Pottery, metal fragments, and post holes hint at domestic, industrial, and possibly ritual activity. But without written records, interpretation is necessarily cautious. The reuse of the site across centuries complicates matters further, as layers overlap and earlier structures are modified or obscured. How much of what we see today reflects the original intent of Bronze Age builders, and how much is the legacy of Iron Age, Roman, or even medieval adaptations? The site becomes a palimpsest of human activity, a record both preserved and partially obscured by time. Cadbury Castle also invites reflection on human ambition and adaptation. Its massive ramparts and terraces demonstrate not only practical skill, but also an understanding of social cohesion, labor coordination, and landscape manipulation. The fort's builders contended with steep slopes, soil stability, and defensive requirements, yet they also shaped the site in ways that express status, control, and permanence. Were these decisions driven purely by survival and defense, or did they also encode beliefs, social norms, or cosmological awareness? What knowledge, practical, observational, and cultural, was embedded in these stones and earthworks that allowed the fort to endure and adapt for centuries? Walking along the ramparts today, one senses both majesty and mystery. The view extends across miles of Somerset countryside, yet the stones themselves tell a story of human ambition, adaptation, and ingenuity. The site conveys permanence, yet the motivations, rituals, and social structures that produced it remain partially hidden. How did the inhabitants experience life within these walls? How did they organize labor, distribute resources, or conduct ceremonial practices? And what lessons about leadership, survival, and human creativity are encoded within the fort's complex layers of construction? Cadbury Castle is a testament to the interplay of landscape, labor, and human imagination. Its earthen walls and terraces endure as silent witnesses, marking centuries of adaptation, construction, and reuse. The fort challenges us to consider the dynamic relationship between humans and their environment, between defense and domesticity, between ritual and utility. Each embankment, each terrace, each modified ditch represents effort, decision-making, and foresight, yet its full meaning is veiled. As sunlight shifts across the Somerset Hills, casting shadows along the ramparts and ditches, Cadbury Castle stands as both sentinel and enigma. Its stones and earthworks invite reflection on time, continuity, and human intention. What drove successive generations to build, rebuild, and inhabit this commanding hilltop? How did Bronze and Iron Age societies perceive power, protection, and sacred space in shaping this site? And what hidden knowledge of social organization, ritual practice, or landscape mastery lies embedded within its layers, waiting for those willing to observe, question, and imagine the lives that passed within these ancient walls? The hill fort endures, monumental, yet inscrutable, a testament to human ingenuity and the mysteries that survive across the ages. From the rolling hills and terraced earthworks of Cadbury Castle, where millennia of human adaptation and defense are etched into the Somerset landscape, our journey now sweeps south across Europe to the sun-baked terrain of southern Spain. Here, near the modern town of Almeria, rises Los Millares, a fortified complex whose monumental walls, deep ditches, and concentric enclosures speak to a Bronze Age civilization both sophisticated and enigmatic. Unlike the solitary prominence of a hill fort, Los Millares is sprawling, complex, and multi-layered, a landscape of stone that communicates not only practical defense, but also social organization, ritual practice, and a carefully maintained presence across generations. Approaching Los Millares, the first impression is one of scale and deliberation. The site occupies a strategic hilltop, its walls rising in broad concentric terraces that follow the contours of the terrain. Stone revetments, some over 2 meters thick, enclose an inner citadel, while multiple outer walls, punctuated by gateways and towers, create successive layers of defense. The ditches that surround the fortifications are wide and deep, excavated with a precision that suggests not only technical knowledge, but also a deliberate projection of power. From a distance, the complex appears almost labyrinthine, a careful orchestration of space that conveys both security and authority. Los Millares dates to approximately 3,200 to 2,200 BCE, placing it firmly in the Copper Age, yet its sophistication anticipates some later Bronze Age settlements. Archaeological excavations reveal a dense concentration of round houses within the walls, alongside storage areas, workshops, and burial sites, including Tholos-style tombs both within and outside the fortifications. The presence of metal objects, pottery, and ornaments suggests trade networks, craft specialization, and social stratification. Yet, for all this evidence, many questions remain. What drove the construction of such extensive fortifications? How was labor coordinated to move and position the massive stones that form the walls? And how did these communities conceptualize space, protection, and identity in ways that are now largely lost to time? The construction techniques at Los Millares are remarkable. Stones are carefully fitted without mortar, their size and placement creating walls that have endured millennia of wind, rain, and seismic activity. Defensive ditches cut into the bedrock emphasize the site's strategic foresight, yet the fortifications are not merely functional. The layout appears carefully planned to control movement, visibility, and access, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of both human behavior and military engineering. Were the walls primarily designed to repel invaders, or did they serve symbolic purposes as well, signaling status, power, and collective identity to outsiders and inhabitants alike? Inside the walls, the settlement conveys a sense of organized domestic life. Round houses cluster in what appear to be neighborhoods or extended family units, their construction consistent yet adaptable to the irregular contours of the hill. Small courtyards, storage pits, and hearths suggest careful attention to daily needs, yet some arrangements hint at ritualized behavior, communal activities, or hierarchies of space. How were decisions made about the placement of homes, tombs, and public areas? Was this organization purely practical, designed for efficiency and protection, or did it encode cultural or spiritual principles now largely indecipherable to us? The burial practices of Los Millares are equally compelling. The tholos tombs, circular stone structures often covered by mounds, contain multiple burials and grave goods that reveal social differentiation and ritual observance. Some tombs lie within the fortification itself, others outside, suggesting varying roles or statuses for individuals within the community. Were these spaces reserved for leaders, warriors, or religious figures? And how did the living interact with these tombs? Were they sites of seasonal ceremony, ancestor veneration, or perhaps markers of territorial claims? The evidence invites speculation but offers no definitive answers, leaving the observer to grapple with the interplay of life, death, and social memory. The scale and organization of Los Millares also imply a complex social structure. Coordinating construction, managing resources, and maintaining fortifications across generations required leadership, planning, and collective effort. Did a single chieftain or council direct these efforts, or was labor organized communally, with knowledge and responsibility shared among the population? And how did the inhabitants balance the demands of defense, domestic life, and ritual practice within such a dense, multi-layered settlement? The stones themselves preserve the imprint of human intention, yet the full scope of social and cultural organization remains elusive. From the sun-baked terraces of Los Millares, where Bronze Age communities shaped monumental walls, dwellings, and tombs across the hills of southern Spain, our journey turns eastward, crossing deserts, mountains, and seas, arriving in the arid landscapes of the United Arab Emirates. Here, in the Oasis region near Al-Ayn, lies Hili Archaeological Park, a site where Bronze Age communities left behind tombs, monumental stone constructions, and carefully organized settlement remains. Unlike the dense fortifications of Spain or the concentric domestic circles of Chirokitia, Hili evokes a landscape of memory, ritual, and enduring human presence in an environment both harsh and life-sustaining, its stones quietly marking the lives and deaths of those who once inhabited this desert frontier. From a distance, Hili is unassuming, blending with the sand-colored plains and the gentle rise of rocky outcrops. Yet, as one approaches, the traces of human effort become undeniable. Carefully laid stones define tombs, enclosures, and pathways, creating a subtle but deliberate landscape of architecture and ritual. Circular and rectangular tombs, some surrounded by low stone walls or cairns, punctuate the site, while larger structures, including platforms and monumental stone alignments, hint at more complex communal or ceremonial functions. The contrast between human construction and desert expanse emphasizes both fragility and endurance, the labor of centuries etched into a harsh environment, surviving the erosive forces of wind and sun. Hili dates to the Bronze Age, roughly 3000 to 2000 BCE, yet some features suggest continuity into the Iron Age. Excavations reveal elaborate burial practices, tombs containing multiple skeletons, often accompanied by ceramic vessels, beads, and occasional metal artifacts. Some tombs are richly constructed with finely dressed stones, while others are simpler, suggesting differentiation in social status, family structure, or ritual importance. The spatial organization of the tombs and their relationship to nearby monumental constructions raises immediate questions. Was Hili primarily a necropolis, a ceremonial hub, or a settlement integrated with both domestic and ritual functions? And how did Bronze Age communities navigate the delicate balance between life, death, and the desert environment? The monumental constructions of Hili are particularly striking. Platforms and stone alignments, some extending for tens of meters, suggest careful planning and symbolic intent. Were these constructions intended to demarcate sacred space, to guide processions, or to serve as territorial markers visible across the surrounding plains? Their scale and organization imply labor coordination, technical knowledge, and long-term planning, yet the precise purpose remains enigmatic. Did these stoneworks represent collective identity, spiritual observance, or early experiments in monumental architecture intended to impress both contemporaries and ancestors? The absence of inscriptions or written records amplifies the mystery, leaving interpretation reliant on careful observation and comparative study. The tombs themselves reveal fascinating details about Bronze Age life and ritual. Some burials show evidence of multiple interments over time, suggesting family or community reuse, while others appear singular and isolated. Grave goods, including ceramic vessels, beads, and occasionally bronze implements, point to social differentiation, craftsmanship, and trade networks extending across the Arabian Peninsula. Yet the selection of what was included, or omitted, raises intriguing questions. Were certain objects symbolic, protective, or purely utilitarian? And how did the living relate to the dead within these spaces, arranging the landscape to reflect memory, status, or spiritual belief? Beyond mortuary practices, the Hili site appears to embody a broader vision of landscape and human interaction. Some researchers note alignments between tombs, platforms, and nearby natural features, suggesting attention to horizon points, water sources, or perhaps even celestial events. Could the placement of monumental stones have marked solstices, seasonal changes, or ritual cycles? Did the community envision their landscape as interconnected, where tombs, living spaces, and ceremonial constructions formed a coherent, symbolic whole? And if so, what knowledge of astronomy, geography, or cosmology was encoded in the careful placement of these stones, now obscured by time and erosion? The construction techniques at Hili are noteworthy. Stones were carefully selected, leveled, and positioned without mortar, producing structures that have endured for millennia despite shifting sands and extreme temperatures. The labor required, the planning evident in alignments and construction sequences, and the sustained care necessary to maintain these sites all point to complex social organization. How were labor, resources, and knowledge coordinated? Were specialized artisans or planners responsible for construction, or did the community work collectively, passing knowledge orally across generations? And how might these practices reflect a worldview that integrated survival, social cohesion, and spiritual observance in a harsh desert environment? Artifacts recovered from Hili add further layers of intrigue. Pottery fragments, beads, bronze implements, and occasional stone tools suggest a community engaged in craft, trade, and ritual. Yet some finds defy easy explanation, such as objects that appear deliberately placed in tombs or platforms without clear functional purpose. Were these offerings to the dead, symbols of status or markers of time and ritual? and what might they reveal about the intersection of everyday life, belief, and monumental architecture in Bronze Age northern Arabia? Walking among the tombs and stone alignments today, one senses a dialogue between permanence and impermanence. The structures endure, yet the communities who built, used, and revered them are largely lost. The desert both conceals and preserves, leaving only fragments of human intention and ingenuity. The site conveys labor, care, and sophistication, yet its full meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. How did the builders of Hili perceive their relationship with the dead, with ancestors, and with the desert itself? How did ritual, social hierarchy, and environmental adaptation inform the layout of tombs, platforms, and pathways? And what subtle knowledge, now obscured by time, was encoded in the placement of stones and the organization of space? Hili Archaeological Park also raises broader questions about cultural connections and human networks. Some features suggest parallels with sites in Oman, Saudi Arabia, and beyond, hinting at shared architectural practices, burial traditions, or ritual concepts. Were these similarities the product of trade, migration, or independent innovation? And what does Hili reveal about the ways Bronze Age communities in northern Arabia navigated identity, memory, and continuity in an environment that demanded both resilience and ingenuity? The subtlety of Hili is as compelling as its scale. Unlike sprawling urban complexes or monumental fortifications, its power lies in arrangement, repetition, and integration with the desert landscape. Circular and rectangular tombs, platforms, and alignments do not scream for attention, yet they communicate deliberation, skill, and symbolic awareness. Each stone, each mound, each carefully planned pathway suggests intent that is both human and enduring, practical and ritualistic. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across tombs and monumental stones, Hili stands as a quiet witness to millennia of human effort, belief, and ingenuity. Its enduring presence invites reflection on the complexity of Bronze Age societies in northern Arabia, the interplay of ritual and daily life, and the ways in which humans shaped and were shaped by the desert environment. What motivated the construction of these tombs and monumental stones? How did communities perceive time, death, and continuity in this arid landscape? And what knowledge, social structures, or spiritual concepts remain encoded in the stones, waiting for those patient enough to study, question, and imagine the lives that shaped Hili Archaeological Park? In the silent desert, the mysteries endure, quietly challenging us to see beyond the stones, to understand the people who built them, and to wonder what remains hidden beneath the sand. From the sun-scorched plains and monumental stoneworks of Hili Archaeological Park, where Bronze Age communities marked their presence in the harsh deserts of northern Arabia, our journey arcs westward across the Mediterranean, returning to the rugged landscapes of Sardinia. Here, atop a gently sloping hill overlooking the rolling valleys and distant mountains, stands the neuralgic fortress of Cairns, one of the most enigmatic examples of the island's Bronze Age civilization. Unlike the carefully arranged tombs of Hili, Cairns embodies strength, permanence, and strategic oversight. A place designed to command the landscape and endure the passage of centuries, yet its full purpose and meaning remain shrouded in mystery. From a distance, Cairns presents the impression of quiet strength. Its stone walls rise directly from the bedrock, composed of massive, roughly dressed blocks, carefully fitted without mortar. Terraces and ramps lead the eye upward to a central tower, or nurach, its silhouette bold against the Sardinian sky. Surrounding it, ancillary structures cluster in irregular patterns, suggesting domestic spaces, storage areas, or ritual enclosures. The fortress's form combines defensive pragmatism with deliberate architectural choice. Walls curve to follow natural contours, entrances are narrow and easily defended, and internal spaces appear carefully organized yet enigmatic. The stones themselves, weathered and sun-bleached, speak of centuries of human labor and foresight. The Nuragic civilization, flourishing roughly between 1800 and 900 BCE, left a distinctive imprint across Sardinia, and Cairns exemplifies the sophistication and endurance of their architectural vision. The central nurag at Cairns, towering above terraces and dwellings, may have functioned as a stronghold, observation post, or ceremonial center. Surrounding structures, often circular or rectangular, suggest habitation, storage, and perhaps workshops for metallurgy or craft. Yet despite decades of study, the exact role of Cairns in Nuragic society remains uncertain. Was it primarily defensive, a community hub, or a symbol of political and spiritual authority? And how did its inhabitants interact with the broader network of Nuragic sites scattered across the island? The construction techniques at Cairns are remarkable. Massive stones, some weighing several tons, were transported and positioned with extraordinary precision, forming walls that have withstood millennia of seismic activity, wind, and rain. The central nurag contains corbelled chambers and terraces, whose engineering demonstrates not only technical skill, but also a deep understanding of stability, weight distribution, and spatial organization. How did Bronze Age communities develop such advanced construction techniques without written instruction? Was knowledge transmitted orally through generations, or were there specialized builders and architects whose expertise guided these monumental undertakings? The layout of Cairns also hints at social organization and ritual practice. Stones arranged in enclosures, terraces, and platforms suggest purposeful zoning within the fortress, with spaces possibly reserved for leadership, communal activity, or religious observance. Certain walls align with natural contours or distant hills, raising the possibility that the site's placement held symbolic or cosmological significance. Could the fortress have been designed not only for defense, but also as a stage for ceremonies that marked seasonal cycles, celestial events, or rites of passage? And, if so, what knowledge of astronomy, landscape, and ritual practice guided these architectural choices? Artifacts recovered from Cairns add additional layers of intrigue. Pottery fragments, bronze tools, and personal ornaments suggest domestic life, craft specialization, and trade. Yet some items appear deliberately positioned within the fortress, hinting at ritual significance. Certain stones exhibit carvings or cup marks, whose purpose, whether symbolic, communicative, or decorative, remains debated. Were these markings meant to guide ritual, commemorate events, or encode knowledge lost to history? The combination of practical habitation and potentially symbolic detail invites speculation about how the Nuragic people integrated the everyday with the sacred, and how such integration shaped their social and spiritual worlds. Strategically, Cairns commands expansive views over the surrounding valleys, hills, and river courses. This vantage point suggests surveillance, control of trade or migration routes, and rapid communication across distances. Yet the fortress is not isolated. Other Nuragic sites lie nearby, forming a network of settlements, watchtowers, and ritual centers. How did these sites interact? Through trade, alliance, or competition? Were some nuragi primarily defensive, while others functioned as ceremonial hubs? And how did Cairns' placement within this broader landscape influence its design, construction, and longevity? Beyond the physical architecture, Cairns invites reflection on human intent, knowledge, and adaptation. Its builders contended with uneven terrain, massive stones, and the logistical challenges of organizing labor, yet they created a fortress that endures in both form and presence. The site demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of material, space, and community coordination. But what intangible knowledge, ritual significance, social hierarchy, or astronomical observation, was embedded in its walls and terraces. And how much of that knowledge remains encoded in the fortress, waiting for patient observation to reveal it? The enduring mystery of Cairns is heightened by its complex chronological layers. Archaeological evidence suggests multiple phases of construction, adaptation, and reuse, possibly spanning several centuries. Walls were extended, terraces reshaped, and internal spaces reorganized to meet changing needs. Was this evolution driven by shifts in population, social hierarchy, or external threats? Or did it reflect spiritual, ceremonial, or cosmological reinterpretations across generations? Each layer represents continuity and change, yet the underlying motives remain tantalizingly inaccessible. Walking among Cairns' terraces today, one senses both majesty and restraint. The fortress commands the landscape, yet its human scale is intimate. Doorways lead into corbelled chambers, platforms invite reflection, and terraces offer quiet observation points. The stones are silent witnesses, recording labor, planning, and communal effort, while also concealing the beliefs, decisions, and rituals of those who shaped them. What daily lives unfolded within these walls? How did communities organize themselves socially, politically, and spiritually around this monumental structure? And what traces of knowledge, technical, ritual, or symbolic, remain encoded in the arrangement of stone, invisible to all but the careful observer? Cairns exemplifies the duality of neurologic architecture. It is both practical and enigmatic, protective and ceremonial, enduring yet layered with mystery. Its Nurag towers above terraces that sheltered households, workshops, and possibly ceremonial spaces, demonstrating human skill, coordination, and vision. Yet the precise meaning, hierarchy, and function of its various components remain speculative, inviting reflection on how ancient communities navigated the interplay of survival, authority, and spiritual observance. As the Sardinian sun descends behind distant hills, casting elongated shadows across the terraces and ramparts of Cairns, the fortress stands as a sentinel of human ingenuity, memory, and mystery. Its stones endure, patient and silent, challenging us to imagine the lives, beliefs, and knowledge of those who shaped this landscape. How did they conceptualize power, ritual, and social cohesion? How did practical and symbolic imperatives intertwine in guiding the fortress's construction and adaptation over centuries? And what hidden knowledge remains embedded in these walls, terraces, and chambers, waiting for those willing to observe, question, and imagine the Bronze Age world of the Nuragic people? Cairns endures, monumental and mysterious, a testament to human resilience, creativity, and the enduring enigma of the past. From the rugged terraces of Sardinia, where the Nuragic fortress of Cairns rises as a monument to Bronze Age ingenuity, our journey now turns east across the Mediterranean Sea to the Balearic Islands, where a different yet equally enigmatic culture flourished. Here, amidst limestone hills and sun-drenched plains, stand the Talaiotic Navetas, chambered tombs closely associated with the island's towering talaiots. Unlike the commanding fortresses of Sardinia, these navetas are low, elongated stone structures, yet their presence evokes the same questions of human intention, ritual significance, and architectural mastery. Each stone seems deliberate, each passage carefully proportioned, yet the meaning behind these Bronze and Iron Age constructions remains elusive. From a distance, a naveta appears deceptively simple. A long boat-shaped mound of carefully placed stones, its entrance often facing east, its interior chamber hidden beneath a modest mound of earth. Yet as one approaches, the precision of its construction becomes apparent. Massive limestone blocks form walls so regular that they seem almost modern, their weight stabilized by careful interlocking. Inside, the chambers are often taller than one might expect, their low ceilings giving way to narrow corridors, alcoves, and niches designed to contain both the dead and the objects associated with them. The navetas are not simply graves. They are deliberate, enduring spaces that reflect a complex relationship between life, death, and community memory. Talaiotic navetas date primarily to the Late Bronze Age and Iron Age, roughly between 1200 and 500 BCE, and are closely associated with the Talaiote towers scattered across the islands. Archaeologists have uncovered multiple burials within these chambers, often accompanied by ceramic vessels, personal ornaments, and occasionally metal objects. The repetition of form, elongated chambers with narrow entrances, suggests shared architectural knowledge and ritual practice. Yet the purpose of these tombs extends beyond simple interment. Were they repositories of family lineage, communal memory, or a more abstract spiritual function? How did the living engage with these chambers across generations, returning to honor the dead while maintaining the rhythms of daily life? The alignment and construction of navetas raise further questions. Many entrances face east or northeast, suggesting attention to sunrise or seasonal cycles. Some chambers display subtle variations in layout, stone selection, or chamber depth, hinting at symbolic or social distinctions. Were these alignments intended to guide ritual practice, to honor celestial events, or to integrate the tombs into the broader landscape of talaiotes, villages, and natural features? And how much of the symbolism is now obscured by the passage of time, leaving only the form of the stones to speak? Construction techniques at the navetas demonstrate both ingenuity and adaptation. Stones were quarried locally, carefully shaped, and arranged to create chambers capable of withstanding centuries of weathering. Unlike the massive fortifications of Sardinia, navetas rely on subtle structural knowledge. The placement of each block, the orientation of walls, and the shaping of ceilings all reflect an understanding of weight, stability, and spatial proportion. How did the builders develop these techniques? Were they specialized artisans, or did knowledge circulate orally across generations within the community? And what drove them to devote such effort to structures whose purpose was intimately tied to death and memory, rather than immediate practical use? The relationship between navetas and talaiotes is equally compelling. Talaiotes, towering stone structures scattered across the Balearics, likely served as watchtowers, communal gathering points, or ritual centers. Navetas, by contrast, are intimate and subterranean, yet their proximity to talaiotes suggests a symbolic or functional connection. Did talaiotes mark territorial boundaries for communities that maintained navetas as ancestral tombs? Were the two structures part of a shared spiritual landscape, linking the living and the dead, the everyday and the sacred? And how did this spatial organization influence social cohesion, hierarchy, or ritual practice within talaiotic society? Excavated artifacts further deepen the mystery. Ceramics, bronze tools, beads, and occasionally exotic imports reveal connections beyond the islands, suggesting trade networks and cultural exchange. Some items appear deliberately placed, perhaps as offerings, protective symbols, or markers of status. The inclusion, or exclusion, of certain objects raises intriguing questions. How did the talaiotic people conceptualize death, memory, and inheritance? Were these burials purely familial, or did they serve communal or spiritual functions that are now obscured? The evidence is tantalizing yet fragmentary, providing glimpses of a society that was technologically capable, socially complex, and ritually sophisticated, yet leaving the full meaning just beyond reach. Walking through the low corridors of a naveta today, one senses a quiet interplay of intimacy and monumentality. The chambers are small enough to hold only a few individuals at a time, yet the mass and precision of their construction give a sense of permanence and authority. The stones bear witness to repeated interaction over centuries, burials added, offerings placed, and perhaps ceremonies performed. The site conveys the labor, coordination, and cultural knowledge required to construct enduring stone architecture, while simultaneously preserving a mystery about the motivations, beliefs, and symbolic frameworks of its builders. Beyond the stones themselves, Nevedas encourage reflection on the Taliotic approach to space, memory, and continuity. Unlike fortified settlements or monumental tombs elsewhere in the Mediterranean, Nevedas integrate carefully with their surroundings, following natural contours and subtly marking the landscape without dominating it. How did the builders perceive their relationship with the land? How did they negotiate the demands of permanence, ritual, and social cohesion within a landscape both familiar and challenging? And what knowledge, astronomical, architectural, or symbolic, was encoded in these elongated chambers, now silent yet resonant with human intention? The enduring mystery of Nevedas is compounded by their distribution across the islands. Hundreds of these chambered tombs exist, yet their specific placement, orientation, and relationship to taliotes vary. Was this variation a reflection of local traditions, family lineages, or environmental considerations? Or did it reflect deeper, now lost spiritual or cosmological principles that guided the taliotic worldview? Each Nevada is both unique and part of a collective architectural and cultural pattern, raising questions about regional identity, intercommunity relations, and the transmission of knowledge across generations. Artifacts recovered from these tombs continue to challenge interpretation. Pottery, beads, and bronze implements are familiar, yet some features remain enigmatic. Carved stone blocks, subtle depressions, and irregular arrangements hint at ritual practices whose meaning is now lost. Were these elements functional, symbolic, or protective? And what do they reveal about the way the taliotic people understood life, death, and the continuity of the community? The Nevedas are simultaneously accessible and inscrutable, preserving the interplay of the practical and the symbolic in ways that modern observers can glimpse but not fully comprehend. As the sun sets over limestone hills dotted with taliots and Nevedas, casting long shadows across the island landscape, one senses both continuity and mystery. The taliotic Nevedas endure, silent witnesses to centuries of human labor, social organization, and ritual practice. They invite reflection on the lives of those who constructed, used, and revered them. How did they conceptualize ancestry, memory, and community? How did they coordinate labor and knowledge to create enduring stone architecture? And what hidden principles, astronomical, symbolic, or spiritual, remain encoded in these low, elongated chambers, waiting for those patient enough to study, question, and imagine the Bronze and Iron Age world of the Balearics? The Nevedas, modest in scale yet monumental in significance, offer a profound reminder of the sophistication, ingenuity, and enduring mystery of taliotic culture. They are at once tombs, architectural statements, and cultural markers, spaces where the living and the dead, the practical and the symbolic, converge. And in the quiet of their stone corridors, the question lingers: what knowledge and intention were embedded in these structures that remains beyond our understanding, silently awaiting rediscovery by the careful eye and reflective mind? The taliotic Nevedas endure, modest yet monumental, an invitation to explore the mysteries of an ancient world that continues to captivate and confound. From the sun-drenched landscapes of the Balearic Islands, where taliotic Nevedas quietly mark the passage of centuries and the interplay of life, death, and ritual, our journey now turns eastward to the fertile plains of eastern Anatolia in modern-day Turkey. Here lies Arslan-Tepe, a site whose monumental stone platforms and early architectural complexes speak of a society experimenting with hierarchy, ritual, and construction at a scale that seems remarkably sophisticated for its time. Unlike the intimate chambers of the Nevedas, The Arslan Tepe platforms rise with a deliberate, almost ceremonial presence, suggesting both practical and symbolic intent, yet their full purpose remains enigmatic. From afar, the site appears as a gentle rise on the plain, its earthen mounds punctuated by the angular shadows of carefully arranged stone constructions. Approaching Arslan Tepe, one notices the deliberate geometry of its terraces, massive platforms built from finely dressed limestone blocks, their surfaces leveled and organized with precision. These structures rise above the surrounding landscape, commanding both visibility and presence. Unlike domestic settlements, the platforms convey authority, hierarchy, and deliberate planning, their scale suggesting communal organization and a capacity for sustained labor across generations. Arslan Tepe's architectural complexity spans the late Chalcolithic through the early Bronze Age, roughly 3,500 to 2000 BCE. Excavations reveal multiple tiers of occupation, with evidence of monumental construction, domestic spaces, storage facilities, and ceremonial areas all layered atop one another. Artifacts recovered from the site, ceramics, metal objects, and stone implements, indicate a society engaged in craft specialization, trade, and resource management. Yet the purpose of the massive platforms themselves remains ambiguous. Were they designed primarily for administrative or political gatherings, ritual observance, or as elevated bases for structures now lost to time? And how did their builders conceptualize space, labor, and authority within this evolving settlement? The construction techniques at Arslan Tepe are remarkable for their period. Stone blocks were carefully shaped and stacked to create stable platforms, capable of supporting both weight and use over centuries. The level surfaces, retained by stone walls, suggest an understanding of both geometry and engineering principles, a knowledge not necessarily intuitive but developed through observation, experimentation, and skilled labor. How was this expertise transmitted? Were there specialist builders, architects, or planners, or did communal knowledge evolve organically through trial and practice? And what motivated the effort to construct such permanent, elevated structures in a society still largely pre-literate? The spatial arrangement of Arslan Tepe's stone platforms suggests more than mere practicality. Some platforms are aligned with other features of the landscape, while others appear to be deliberately separated, creating zones that may have delineated social, religious, or political functions. Could the elevation of certain platforms indicate areas reserved for elite activity, ritual ceremonies, or administrative oversight? How did these architectural choices reflect the values, hierarchies, or cosmological understanding of the society that built them? And how were domestic and ceremonial spaces integrated, guiding the daily life and ritual observances of the community? Excavations have revealed a mix of domestic and symbolic artifacts, hinting at a society in which ritual and daily life were closely intertwined. Stone vessels, finely made ceramics, and early metal tools suggest technological proficiency and artistic awareness. Some objects appear deliberately deposited in specific contexts, hinting at offerings, ceremonial deposits, or markers of status. Were these placements practical, spiritual, or symbolic? Or perhaps all three simultaneously? And what unseen systems of knowledge, memory, or cosmology guided these decisions, now largely obscured by time? The stratigraphy of Arslan Tepe is especially compelling. Multiple phases of construction indicate that the platforms were repeatedly modified, expanded, and repurposed over centuries. Some terraces were raised, walls extended, and new platforms added atop older foundations, suggesting adaptive reuse in response to changing social, political, or ritual needs. What prompted these successive modifications? Were they responses to environmental pressures, shifts in population, or changes in social hierarchy? or did evolving spiritual or ritual practices necessitate architectural transformation? The layering of stone and labor tells a story of continuity and change, yet the full narrative remains tantalizingly incomplete. The prominence of Arslan Tepe within the broader landscape also invites reflection. Elevated above the plain, the platforms offer clear visibility over the surrounding fields, river courses, and distant hills. Such positioning implies strategic awareness, perhaps to monitor trade routes, agricultural resources, or neighboring communities. But it may also carry symbolic meaning, projecting authority and reinforcing social cohesion. How did elevation, visibility, and spatial organization serve both practical and social functions? And what role did these monumental constructions play in the collective consciousness of the people who lived and labored there? Walking across the stone platforms today, one senses a dialogue between permanence and ambiguity. The massive blocks and carefully leveled terraces reflect extraordinary human labor, skill, and planning, yet the full meaning of the site remains elusive. Each stone and alignment hints at intention, hierarchy, and ritual, but the absence of written records leaves their purpose partially hidden. How did the builders experience this elevated space? Did the platforms host political councils, religious ceremonies, or community gatherings, or some combination of all three? And how did successive generations reinterpret, maintain, and reshape these structures to reflect shifting priorities and beliefs? Arslan Tepe also challenges assumptions about technological and social development in the late Chalcolithic and early Bronze Age. The platforms demonstrate advanced understanding of geometry, load-bearing construction, and site planning, suggesting that early societies in this region possessed not only practical knowledge, but also social organization capable of mobilizing labor and maintaining continuity over centuries. Yet the cultural, spiritual, and political systems that supported such monumental architecture remain largely hidden, leaving us to wonder about the interplay of power, ritual, and daily life in this early settlement. As sunlight shifts across the terraces of Arslan Tepe, illuminating the carefully placed blocks and casting shadows along the edges of the platforms, one senses both ingenuity and mystery. The site endures as a record of human labor, vision, and adaptation, yet it also invites questions about the beliefs, priorities, and social structures that shaped it. How did the community negotiate the demands of practical construction, social hierarchy, and ritual observance? What knowledge, technical, symbolic, or cosmological, was embedded in these platforms, now silent yet resonant with centuries of human experience? And what remains hidden beneath the stone surfaces, waiting for those willing to observe, question, and imagine the lives of those who labored to elevate earth and stone into enduring monuments? Arslan Tepe's stone platforms are both familiar and enigmatic. Familiar in their evidence of human labor, organization, and architectural skill, yet enigmatic in their precise function, symbolic meaning, and cultural significance. They remind us that even in societies thousands of years removed from writing and modern record-keeping, humans conceived, planned, and executed monumental works that conveyed social, ritual, and possibly spiritual knowledge across generations. And as the sun casts its final light across the Anatolian plain, the question lingers. What hidden purposes, knowledge, or ceremonies shaped these stone platforms, and what secrets remain encoded within their enduring terraces, waiting to be uncovered by the patient and inquisitive observer? From the monumental stone platforms of Arslan Tepe in eastern Anatolia, where Bronze Age builders elevated earth and limestone into terraces of enduring authority and ritual significance, our exploration returns once more to the sun-drenched deserts of Arabia, this time to the rugged mountain slopes of Oman. Here, amidst the rocky outcrops and narrow wadis, lie the enigmatic Wadi Al-Ayn beehive tombs, so called for their distinctive circular corbelled shape that rises like a stone hive from the desert floor. Unlike the elevated ceremonial platforms of Arslan Tepe, These tombs are intimately scaled, yet they communicate a remarkable understanding of stone construction, labor organization, and ritualized space, their purpose and origin still shrouded in mystery. From a distance, the beehive tombs seem almost delicate, their rounded stone domes blending seamlessly with the surrounding desert rock. Yet closer inspection reveals a precision that is striking for such an ancient site. Each limestone block is carefully shaped and positioned, forming a corbelled roof that distributes weight evenly across the circular walls. The result is a chamber both sturdy and graceful, its low entrance leading into a cool interior that would have sheltered the remains of the dead for centuries. The scale and skill involved in constructing these tombs suggest not only technical knowledge, but also social coordination, a labor force capable of quarrying, shaping, and transporting stones, and a society motivated to commemorate its dead in enduring form. Dating to the Bronze Age, roughly 2,500 to 1,500 BCE, the Wadi Al-Ayn tombs belong to a broader tradition of mortuary architecture across northern Oman. Excavations have revealed skeletal remains, occasionally accompanied by ceramics, beads, and small metal objects. The concentration of tombs along particular wadis suggests deliberate selection of landscape and site, perhaps reflecting both practical access to stone and water and symbolic attention to natural features. Were these tombs reserved for elite families, community leaders, or religious specialists? And how did their placement along wadis inform ritual practice, territorial identity, or collective memory? The architectural form of the beehive tombs is particularly intriguing. Unlike rectangular or linear graves found elsewhere, the corbelled circular chambers reflect a sophisticated understanding of geometry and structural mechanics. Each stone leans slightly inward, the layers gradually closing to form a self-supporting dome, a design that allows the tomb to endure millennia of seismic activity, erosion, and extreme temperatures. How did these builders develop such techniques without written instruction? Was knowledge passed down through oral tradition, apprenticeship, or experimentation? And what does this mastery of stone tell us about the broader technical capabilities of Bronze Age communities in Oman? The distribution of tombs across Wadi Al-Ayn further deepens the mystery. Some clusters contain multiple beehive structures in close proximity, suggesting family compounds, social groups, or ritual precincts. Others stand in isolation, overlooking distant valleys or commanding views of seasonal watercourses. Could the positioning of these tombs have encoded cosmological, spiritual, or territorial significance? Were certain tombs aligned with sunrise, sunset, or celestial bodies? And if so, how did these ancient communities integrate astronomy, geography, and ritual into the landscape in ways that are now obscured by time? Excavated artifacts hint at both practical and symbolic dimensions of life and death. Ceramics, beads, and occasionally bronze implements suggest craft specialization, trade, and social stratification. Yet certain items appear deliberately deposited within tombs, sometimes in patterns or positions that defy easy explanation. Were these offerings to the dead, markers of status, or symbols intended to protect or empower the deceased in the afterlife? And what unwritten cultural logic governed the choice, arrangement, and repetition of these objects across generations? The labor and organization required to construct the Wadi Al-Ayn tombs speak to social cohesion and knowledge transmission. Quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing stones without mortar requires skill, planning, and cooperation. How did these communities coordinate the effort? Were tombs built communally, with knowledge shared among many? Or were there specialized masons and planners who guided the work? And what social or spiritual incentives motivated repeated generations to invest such effort in mortuary architecture? The Wadi Al-Ayn tombs also invite reflection on the relationship between life, death, and landscape. Situated along seasonal wadis and beneath cliffs, These structures interact subtly with water, rock, and light. The domed chambers, hidden entrances, and carefully leveled stones suggest attention to both protection and ritualized experience. Did communities return regularly to the tombs for ceremonies, ancestor veneration, or seasonal observation? And how did the presence of these stone beehives shape social memory, hierarchy, and identity within the broader Bronze Age landscape? Walking among the tombs today, one is struck by the quiet interplay of intimacy and monumentality. Each corbelled dome is small enough to be human-scaled, yet collectively the clusters form a landscape of enduring presence. The stones themselves bear witness to human ingenuity, ritual attention, and continuity across centuries, even as the specific intentions and beliefs of the builders remain largely inaccessible. How did they experience the process of constructing these chambers, of burying their dead, and of interacting with the landscape in ways that fused practicality, ritual, and social cohesion? The Wadi Al-Ayn tombs, like other Bronze Age mortuary sites across Arabia, challenge modern assumptions about early societies. They demonstrate advanced knowledge of construction, labor organization, and spatial planning. Yet they also preserve ambiguity, leaving modern observers to speculate about ritual, cosmology, and social hierarchy. What knowledge, technical, symbolic, or spiritual, was embedded in the corbelled walls, circular chambers, and strategic placements of these tombs? And what secrets might still lie buried, awaiting discovery beneath the shifting sands of the wadi? As the desert sun dips behind the rugged peaks of northern Oman, casting long shadows over the beehive tombs, Wadi Al-Ayn endures as a silent testament to human labor, ingenuity, and devotion. Its structures are both enduring and enigmatic, offering glimpses of social organization, ritual practice, and technical mastery, while leaving the broader intentions of their builders just out of reach. How did these Bronze Age communities conceptualize death, memory, and continuity? How did they integrate life, landscape, and ritual into the architecture of the tombs? And what remains hidden, within the stones, beneath the sand, or in the unrecorded practices of a society long vanished, waiting for those willing to observe, question, and imagine the world that created these extraordinary structures? The Wadi Al-Ayn beehive tombs endure, modest yet monumental, intimate yet commanding, a profound invitation to explore the mysteries of Bronze Age Arabia and the ingenuity of the communities that shaped it. From the sun-baked deserts and beehive tombs of Wadi Al-Ayn in Oman, where Bronze Age communities shaped enduring mortuary spaces into the rugged landscape, our journey arcs northwest across Anatolia to the heart of ancient Hatti, where the ruins of Hattusa rise from the central Anatolian plateau. Here, amidst rocky outcrops and the rolling hills of modern-day Turkey, stand the outer Cyclopean walls of Hattusa, massive stone fortifications that seem almost impossibly ancient, stretching across kilometers of terrain, their sheer scale both commanding and mysterious. These walls, composed of enormous limestone blocks carefully fitted together without mortar, convey a deliberate assertion of strength, yet their full meaning and construction methods remain partly enigmatic. Approaching the site, the walls dominate the horizon. Massive stones, some weighing several tons, form layers that zigzag along the natural contours of hills and valleys. The outer fortifications encompass not only the city itself, but also sacred precincts, administrative quarters, and domestic areas, creating a landscape where human ingenuity has imposed order on the rugged terrain. The cyclopean nature of the walls, so called because of the monumental, almost mythical scale of the stones, invites awe. How did the Hittites quarry, transport, and position these enormous blocks with the technology available in the late Bronze Age? And what social and political organization was required to mobilize labor, resources, and knowledge on such a massive scale? Hattusa, flourishing between roughly 1650 and 1200 BCE, was the capital of the Hittite Empire, a complex polity that rivaled contemporary civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt. The outer walls are far more than simple defensive structures. Their design incorporates gates, bastions, and towers, sometimes placed strategically to guard water sources, high ground, or approach routes. Archaeologists note that the walls were constructed in phases, with successive enlargements and reinforcements reflecting the city's growth and shifting defensive needs. Could the cyclopean nature of the outer walls also have served a symbolic function, projecting power, stability, and divine favor to both inhabitants and visitors? Was the very scale of the stones intended to impress, intimidate, or communicate authority beyond mere military utility? The precision of construction is striking. Despite the enormous size of the stones, the walls exhibit careful fitting, stability, and alignment with topographical features. Some blocks show fine dressing. Others appear roughly hewn, yet interlock with remarkable efficiency. What techniques allowed Hittite engineers to achieve such durability? Were ramps, levers, or counterweights used? Or did knowledge of local geology guide the selection and placement of stones? And how was such knowledge transmitted, refined, and preserved across generations to produce walls that still endure after more than 3 millennia? The placement of the walls also reveals an understanding of landscape and sightlines. The fortifications follow hilltops, enclose valleys, and adapt to natural contours, suggesting a sophisticated approach to strategic defense and urban planning. Could the walls have been designed not only to protect, but also to structure human experience within the city, guiding movement, controlling access, and reinforcing social hierarchy? And how did religious or ceremonial considerations influence their placement, given that Hattusa also contained temples, ritual spaces, and sacred precincts? Archaeological investigations reveal that the walls were complemented by complex urban infrastructure. Streets, gates, drainage systems, and internal retaining walls indicate that the fortifications were integrated with the city's daily life, not merely defensive standalone structures. Pottery, inscriptions, and everyday objects found within and around the walls hint at a vibrant urban community, yet the monumental stones overshadow the ordinary, conveying a sense of enduring power and permanence. What does this interplay between monumental architecture and domestic space tell us about the values, priorities, and worldview of Hittite society? The sheer labor required to build the Cyclopean walls is staggering. Moving and placing stones of such size demands coordinated effort, technical knowledge, and long-term planning. Did Hattusa's rulers rely on conscripted labor, specialized guilds, or a combination of both? And beyond practical concerns, what symbolic or ideological motivations sustained the effort to construct walls that would outlast generations, perhaps even centuries? Could the walls themselves have been conceived as a statement of divine order, linking the earthly city with cosmic or spiritual principles that guided Hittite rulers? Despite extensive study, many questions remain unresolved. Some outer walls follow seemingly defensive patterns, yet others meander or terminate inexplicably. Certain sections appear overbuilt, raising the possibility of ceremonial, symbolic, or even astronomical considerations. How did Hittite builders decide where to thicken walls, place gates, or leave open spaces? And what cultural, religious, or political imperatives influenced these decisions? Knowledge that may have been encoded in stone, yet lost with the passage of time. Walking along the remnants of these Cyclopean walls today, one is struck by the dual impression of human ingenuity and enduring mystery. The walls are tangible evidence of organizational skill, engineering expertise, and social coordination, yet they also provoke questions about power, ritual, and symbolism in the Bronze Age. How did inhabitants experience these walls? Did they perceive them purely as protection, as markers of civic identity, or as instruments of cosmic or spiritual significance? And what intentions, beliefs, and knowledge were encoded in these stones that remain silent to modern observers? The Hattusa outer walls remind us that ancient architecture is never merely functional. Their scale, precision, and placement suggest a complex interplay of defense, administration, ritual, and symbolic projection. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the massive stones, the walls convey both permanence and enigma, enduring testimony to human skill, vision, and ambition, yet still holding secrets about the Hittite world that elude our understanding. How did the builders of Hattusa balance practicality, ritual, and authority in the design of these colossal walls? What technical knowledge, social organization, and ideological vision made them possible? And what subtle messages about power, divinity, or social order remain hidden in the placement of each stone, the orientation of gates, and the very geometry of the fortifications? Even as the walls endure, their mysteries remain, quietly challenging us to look closer, think deeper, and imagine the minds that conceived, planned, and labored to create one of the most remarkable defensive and symbolic landscapes of the ancient world.